The dispatch sheet said 1847 Cypress Hollow Road, Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. I'd been driving trucks for 23 years, and in all that time, I'd never questioned an address. You don't last long in this business if you start second-guessing every delivery slip that crosses your dashboard. But sitting there in my Kenworth at 3 in the morning, watching the rain streak down my windshield while I squinted at that paper under the dome light, something felt off about this one. My name's Amos Weatherby, and I'd been running loads through Louisiana since I was 22. Started with a beat-up Freightliner that leaked oil like a sieve, and worked my way up to this 2018 Kenworth W900 that I kept cleaner than most folks keep their living rooms. The company I drove for, Pelican State Logistics, mostly handled industrial equipment. Generators, compressors, the kind of heavy machinery that kept the oil refineries and chemical plants running along the Mississippi River corridor. This particular load was different, though. 8 sealed aluminum crates, each one marked with nothing but a serial number and fragile, this side up, stenciled in red. The manifest didn't specify contents, just listed them as specialty medical equipment. The pickup had been from a warehouse in Lafayette that I'd never delivered to before. A gray, concrete block of a building with no signage, just a number on the door. The security guard who signed my paperwork had kept his head down the whole time, wouldn't make eye contact, just mumbled something about making sure I got there before sunrise. I'd driven through Breaux Bridge plenty of times. Nice little town, famous for its crawfish festival. Population maybe 8,000 on a good day. But I'd never heard of Cypress Hollow Road. My GPS didn't recognize it either. Kept trying to redirect me to Cypress Street, which was in the middle of town near the old Catholic church. But the dispatcher had been specific when I'd called to confirm. It's hollow, not street. Should be about 4 miles past the bridge, on your right. Look for the old Thibodaux sugar mill. It's just past that. The Thibodaux mill had been abandoned since Hurricane Andrew back in '92. I remembered passing it once during daylight, a sprawling ruin of rusted metal and crumbling brick, slowly being reclaimed by kudzu and Spanish moss. Not the kind of place you'd expect to find anyone ordering medical equipment. The rain had started around midnight, just as I crossed into St. Martin Parish. Not a gentle Louisiana shower, but a proper downpour that turned the highway into a river and reduced visibility to maybe 20 feet. My wipers were working overtime, squealing against the glass with each pass. The CB radio crackled with static, atmospheric interference from the storm. I'd tried raising other truckers a few times, but either nobody was out here or the weather was blocking the signals. I found the turnoff for Cypress Hollow Road right where dispatch said it would be. If I hadn't been looking for it, I would have driven right past. No street sign, just a narrow gap in the tree line marked by a rusted mailbox with no number. The road itself was unpaved, just crushed limestone that had turned to thick mud in the rain. My truck lurched as the wheels found purchase, the trailer swaying slightly behind me. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating walls of cypress trees on either side, their knees jutting up from standing water that reflected my lights like black mirrors. Spanish moss hung so low in places that it brushed against my windshield. The road was barely wide enough for my rig. If another vehicle came from the opposite direction, one of us would have to back up for miles. After about a half mile, I started seeing houses, if you could call them that. More like shacks, really, built on stilts to keep them above the swamp water. Most looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, porches collapsed, roofs caved in. But a few showed signs of life. Dim lights flickering behind dirty windows, shadows moving inside. An old rocking chair on one porch, creaking back and forth despite the absence of wind. The numbers on the occasional mailbox didn't make sense. 403, then 1791, then 82. No pattern, no logic, like someone had just slapped random numbers on them. I kept checking my odometer, watching for 1847. That's when I noticed the smell. Even with the windows up and the AC recirculating, it crept into the cab. Rot, decay, sweet and cloying, like fruit left too long in the sun, mixed with something medicinal. Formaldehyde, maybe. It grew stronger the deeper I drove into the hollow. My hands were getting sweaty on the wheel. I'd delivered to some sketchy places before. Abandoned warehouses, construction sites in the middle of nowhere, even a few places that turned out to be fronts for less than legal operations. But this was different. This felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The road curved sharply to the left, and my headlights swept across a larger structure. Not a house. Too big for that. More like an old plantation home that had seen better centuries. 3 stories of rotting wood and broken windows, with a wraparound porch that sagged in the middle like a frown. The number on the mailbox, 1847. I stopped the truck about 50 yards from the house, letting the engine idle while I studied the place. No lights visible inside. No vehicles in what passed for a driveway. Just a muddy patch where the gravel gave way to grass. The front door was slightly ajar. Darkness visible through the gap. Everything in my gut told me to throw the truck in reverse and get out of there. Call dispatch, tell them the address was wrong, that nobody was home, that the road was impassable, anything. But I'd never failed to complete a delivery in 23 years. It was a point of pride. Besides, I needed this job. My ex-wife's lawyer had just hit me with another round of alimony adjustments, and my daughter was starting college in the fall. I reached for my phone to call the customer, let them know I'd arrived. No signal, not even one bar. That wasn't unusual out in the Louisiana backwoods, but it didn't help my nerves any. The rain had lightened to a drizzle. I could wait it out, hope someone would come out of the house when they heard the truck. Or I could do what I always did, take initiative, get the job done, get back on the road. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box, checked that my knife was still clipped to my belt, and opened the door. The humid air hit me like a wet blanket, thick and oppressive despite the rain. That smell was stronger now, making my eyes water. The ground squelched under my boots as I walked toward the house. Something moved in one of the upper windows. Quick, just a flash of pale motion, then nothing. Could have been a curtain, could have been something else. I climbed the porch steps carefully. The wood groaned under my weight, soft with rot. The front door had been painted white once, but most of it had peeled away, leaving bare wood underneath that had turned gray with age. There was no doorbell, so I knocked, the sound hollow and wrong in the thick air. "Delivery from Pelican State Logistics," I called out. "Got 8 crates here for 1847 Cypress Hollow Road." Silence. I knocked again, harder this time. The door swung open wider under the force, revealing a dark hallway beyond. The smell that wafted out made me step back, covering my nose. Definitely formaldehyde, mixed with something else. Something organic and wrong. That's when I heard it. From somewhere deep in the house, a voice. Soft, almost conversational, like someone talking on the phone. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was calm, pleasant even. "Hello?" I called again. "I've got a delivery here. Need someone to sign for it." The voice stopped, then footsteps, slow, measured, coming down what sounded like stairs. Not rushing, not hesitant, just steady, deliberate steps getting closer. A figure appeared at the end of the hallway, backlit by some unseen light source. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a white coat. They didn't move into the doorway, just stood there, about 20 feet back in the shadows. "Mr. Weatherby?" The voice was cultured, educated, male but soft, "We've been expecting you." That stopped me cold. I hadn't given my name. It wasn't on any of the paperwork I carried, and I hadn't spoken to anyone since leaving Lafayette. "How do you know my name?" I asked, my hand moving instinctively to my knife. The figure took a step forward, still not enough to see their face clearly. "Oh, we know all about you, Amos. 51 years old, divorced. One daughter, Sarah, studying pre-med at LSU. You live in that little apartment complex off Highway 90 in Broussard. Unit 12B, isn't it?" My blood turned to ice water. I took a step back, the porch board creaking dangerously under my heel. "Who are you?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. "I'm Der Ichabod Grimsby," the figure said, taking another step forward. Now I could see him better. Mid-60s, thin white hair, pale skin that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes were the worst part. Too wide, too bright, like he was seeing something funny that I wasn't in on. "And you're right on time. Look, I just need someone to sign for these crates," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Then I'll unload them wherever you want them, and I'll be on my way." Dr. Grimsby smiled. His teeth were perfect, too white, too straight. "Oh, but you've come such a long way. Surely you'll stay for some coffee. My colleague is very eager to meet you." "Colleague?" "Mr. Enoch Pitchfork. He handles our procurement. He's the one who arranged for your company specifically. For you specifically, actually." Everything about this was wrong. I needed to get back to my truck, call this in, let someone else deal with whatever was happening here. But Grimsby was blocking the doorway now, still smiling that too wide smile. "I appreciate the offer," I said, taking another step back. "But I've got 3 more deliveries to make tonight. If you could just sign..." "3 more deliveries?" Grimsby tilted his head like a curious bird. "That's interesting. Your dispatcher told us this was your only run tonight. Said you'd have plenty of time for our special requirements." I hadn't spoken to dispatch since leaving Lafayette. How could he know my schedule? Unless... "You spoke to my dispatcher?" "Oh yes, Mr. Randall was very helpful. Gave us all sorts of useful information." Grimsby pulled out a clipboard from inside his coat. My clipboard. The one I'd left on the passenger seat of my locked truck. "Shall we review the manifest together?" I backed up quickly, too quickly. The rotten board under my heel gave way with a wet crack. My foot punched through, ankle deep, and I felt something sharp rake across my calf through my jeans. I yanked my foot free, stumbling backward down the porch steps. Grimsby didn't move to help, just stood there, still smiling, holding my clipboard. "Careful, Mr. Weatherby. We wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. Not before we've had a chance to properly thank you for your delivery." I made it to solid ground, my ankle throbbing. Through the tear in my jeans, I could see blood seeping through. Not much, but enough to worry about. "I'm going back to my truck," I said. "I'm calling this in." "No signal out here," Grimsby said pleasantly. "Haven't you noticed? We value our privacy in Cypress Hollow. Besides, your truck won't start. Mr. Pitchfork took the liberty of disconnecting your battery while you were walking up here. Just a precaution. We've had delivery drivers leave before completing their service, and that's just bad business." I turned toward my truck. Sure enough, I could see a figure near the front of it. Tall, bulky, wearing dark clothes. He raised one hand in a mock wave. "What do you want?" I asked, turning back to Grimsby. "Just to complete our transaction," he said. "You deliver our equipment. We sign for it. You help us unload it in the specific location we've prepared. Then we discuss your additional services." "Additional services?" "Oh yes. You see, Mr. Weatherby, We didn't just order equipment. We ordered an operator, someone with your particular qualifications. 23 years on the road, no close family ties. A man who won't be immediately missed if he's delayed for a few days. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to run. But run where? I was at least 4 miles from the main road, in unfamiliar territory with an injured ankle, in the dark. And there were at least 2 of them, probably more. "You're talking about kidnapping," I said. Grimsby laughed, a sound like wind through dry leaves. Such an ugly word. We prefer to think of it as an extended consultation. You see, those crates in your trailer don't contain medical equipment. Well, not in the traditional sense. They contain something far more valuable. Something that requires a very specific type of person to operate. Someone accustomed to long hours. Someone who can handle isolation. Someone who understands the importance of following directions exactly. You're insane. Perhaps, but we're also very well funded, and we've been waiting for the right candidate for a very long time. You should be flattered, really. Out of all the drivers we researched, you were perfect. The figure by my truck, Enoch Pitchfork, presumably, started walking toward us. He moved wrong, like his knees bent backward slightly with each step. In the dim light from my truck's running lights, I could see he was massive, maybe 6'5", with shoulders that strained against a dark canvas jacket. His face was obscured by the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat, but I could see his hands. They were too large, fingers too long, like someone had stretched normal hands on a rack. "Mr. Pitchfork," Grimsby called out pleasantly, "would you be so kind as to show Mr. Weatherby what we've prepared?" Pitchfork's voice when it came was like gravel in a cement mixer. "Been ready since Tuesday. Got everything set up just like you wanted." Tuesday. This was Friday. They'd been preparing for me for 3 days. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My hand found the knife on my belt, though what good a 3-inch blade would do against 2 of them, I didn't know. "Oh, but you are," Grimsby said. "You see, we've already called your dispatcher, told him you'd completed the delivery but had some engine trouble. Said you'd be delayed a day or 2 while waiting for parts. He was very understanding. Even said to take your time, that your next load could wait." That wasn't right. Randall would never say that. We had contracts, schedules. A day's delay could cost thousands in penalties. Unless... "You're lying." "Am I?" Grimsby pulled out a phone. My phone, I realized with a sick feeling. It must have fallen out when I put my foot through the porch. "Would you like to see the text conversation?" Your dispatcher was quite concerned. Even offered to send another driver to help. We assured him that wasn't necessary. He held up the phone. Sure enough, there was a text chain with Randall's number. The messages were written in my style, my typical abbreviations. They'd been watching me long enough to mimic my texting patterns. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "Months," Pitchfork said, now close enough that I could smell him. Motor oil and something chemical, like embalming fluid. "Ever since we tracked the shipment to your company, knew it had to be someone from Pelican State. Just had to figure out which driver." "What shipment? Those crates?" "The crates are just the beginning," Grimsby said. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Mr. Pitchfork, perhaps you should show Mr. Weatherby the workspace. I think he'll be impressed with what we've accomplished." Pitchfork reached into his jacket and pulled out something I didn't expect. A photograph. He held it up in the light from the truck. It was me, taken from a distance, pumping diesel at a Flying J truck stop. But it wasn't recent. The timestamp in the corner showed it was from 3 months ago. "That was the day we decided," Pitchfork said. "Watched you help that lady with the broken-down car. Spent 2 hours in the rain getting her engine started. Didn't ask for nothing in return." I remembered that day. An elderly woman reminded me of my mother before she passed. Her old Buick had died at the pumps, and I couldn't just leave her there. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, Grimsby said. You see, Mr. Weatherby, what we need requires a very specific type of person. Someone with mechanical aptitude, yes. Someone used to working alone, certainly. But most importantly, someone with a particular moral flexibility. Someone who helps others not for reward, but because it's necessary. That doesn't make any sense, doesn't it? Tell me, when you're driving late at night, alone on those empty highways, do you ever think about how easy it would be to just disappear? To drive off into the darkness and become someone else entirely? The truth was, I had thought about it. More than once. Especially after the divorce when everything fell apart. But I'd never acted on it. I had responsibilities, obligations. Everyone thinks about running away, I said. But not everyone is suited for what comes after, Grimsby said. Mr. Pitchfork, I think it's time. Pitchfork moved faster than a man his size should be able to. I went for my knife, managed to get it halfway out of the sheath before his hand closed around my wrist. His grip was like a vice, bones grinding together. My fingers went numb instantly, the knife falling into the mud. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, he growled. I swung with my left hand, connected with his ribs. It was like punching a tree trunk. He didn't even grunt, just grabbed my other wrist and held both arms out to my sides like I was being crucified. The thing is, Grimsby said, approaching slowly, we've done this before. Not with truck drivers necessarily, but with other specialists. Most of them didn't work out. Too much resistance. Too many questions. But you, Mr. Weatherby, you're different. We can tell. He reached into his coat and pulled out a syringe filled with something clear. This won't knock you out, he said conversationally, like we were discussing the weather. That would be counterproductive. We need you awake, aware. This just makes you more cooperative. Loosens the barriers between what you think you should do and what you need to do. I tried to pull away, but Pitchfork's grip was unbreakable. The needle went into my neck, a sharp sting followed by a spreading warmth. Not unpleasant, exactly, like sinking into a hot bath after a long day. There we go, Grimsby said. Now, let's go see what we've prepared for you. The world took on a strange quality, like I was watching everything through frosted glass. My legs still worked, but they felt distant, disconnected. Pitchfork released my wrists and I didn't run. Couldn't? Wouldn't? The distinction seemed unimportant. They led me around the side of the house, through weeds that reached my waist. Behind the main structure was another building, a barn, though calling it that was generous. It was more like a warehouse made of corrugated metal and rotting wood, easily 60 feet long and half as wide. Light leaked through gaps in the walls, creating thin lines of yellow in the darkness. The door was new, solid steel with multiple locks. Pitchfork produced a ring of keys and began opening them one by one. 7 locks in total. Security is important, Grimsby said. We've had incidents. Previous subjects who didn't appreciate the opportunity we were offering. Inside, the barn had been transformed. The dirt floor had been covered with clean concrete. Industrial lights hung from the rafters, bathing everything in harsh white fluorescence. Along one wall were the 8 crates from my truck, but I didn't remember unloading them. How were they here? Confused? Grimsby asked. You've been more cooperative than you realize. You helped us move them about 10 minutes ago. The medication can affect a short-term memory formation. 10 Minutes, that couldn't be right. We'd just been at the front of the house, but looking at my clothes, I could see fresh mud on my jacket, scratches on my hands I didn't remember getting. The center of the barn was dominated by something covered with a black tarp. It was huge, maybe 15 feet tall and twice as long. The shape underneath was irregular, mechanical, with angles that didn't quite make sense. "Before we show you," Grimsby said, "I need you to understand something. What you're about to see doesn't exist. Not officially. The company that made it went bankrupt in 1987. All their assets were supposedly destroyed, but certain interested parties preserved some of their more ambitious projects." Pitchfork grabbed the edge of the tarp and pulled. It fell away like water, revealing the thing underneath. It was a machine, but calling it that was like calling a tiger a cat. Technically true, but missing the essential wrongness of it. The base was tracked, like construction equipment, but the tracks were segmented in ways that let them flex and grip independently. The main body was a mass of hydraulic arms, each ending in different tools, cutting implements, gripping claws, things that looked medical but sized for something much larger than human surgery. But the worst part was the cab. It wasn't designed for protection or visibility. It was designed for integration. The seat was more like a medical chair, with restraints for arms, legs, torso, head. Tubes and wires hung from various ports meant to connect to something. Someone. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Grimsby said. "The excavator-class biological interface unit. There were only 3 ever made. This is the last one." "What does it do?" My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. "It mines," Pitchfork said simply. "But not minerals, not oil, something much more valuable." "We discovered a deposit," Grimsby continued, walking around the machine, running his hand along its metal flanks. "About 3 miles from here, deep in the swamp. At first, we thought it was just another salt dome, but the readings were all wrong. The material, it's organic, but ancient, Precambrian, maybe older, and it's alive, in a sense." "That's impossible." "Is it? You've driven through these swamps at night. You've seen things that shouldn't exist. Lights where there are no roads. Sounds that no animal makes. You know there are places in Louisiana where the regular rules don't apply." He was right. Every trucker who ran routes through the deep bayou had stories. Things we didn't talk about except in whispers at truck stops, and only when we'd had too much coffee and too little sleep. "The machine," Grimsby continued, "requires a specific type of operator. The biological interface, those tubes and wires, they connect directly to the nervous system. Most people can't handle it. The feedback is too intense. They go mad within minutes. But someone used to long hours of focus, someone who can dissociate from physical discomfort, someone who understands that sometimes you have to push through the pain to get the job done." "A trucker," I finished. "Specifically, a long-haul trucker with your particular psychological profile," Grimsby said. "We've been through your medical records, your VA files from your time in the service, your therapy sessions after the divorce. You have an unusually high tolerance for isolation and discomfort, combined with an almost pathological need to complete assigned tasks. You hacked my medical records? Hacked is such an ugly word. We prefer accessed. And what we found was fascinating. Did you know you have a rare genetic marker? Less than 3% of the population has it. It affects how your brain processes certain neurotransmitters, makes you resistant to particular types of psychological stress." Pitchfork had moved to one of the crates, was prying it open with a crowbar. Inside were components, mechanical parts that looked like they belonged to the machine, but also organic elements preserved in glass containers. Things that might have been organs, if organs were made of black metal and pulsing meat. The integration process takes approximately 6 hours, Grimsby was saying, but his voice seemed to come from very far away. The drug in my system made everything feel like it was happening to someone else, like I was watching a movie about a trucker named Amos Weatherby who'd made a very bad delivery decision. 6 hours of what? I heard myself ask. Calibration. The machine needs to map your nervous system, understand your responses, learn your limitations. It's quite fascinating, really. The original designers based it on certain deep-sea creatures that form symbiotic relationships with other organisms. Pitchfork had finished opening the first crate and moved to the second. This one contained what looked like a chair. No, a medical chair, with straps and sensors and things I didn't want to identify. We'll start with basic neural mapping, Grimsby continued, walking over to a bank of monitors I hadn't noticed before. They were old, CRT screens that belonged in a museum, but they hummed with life. Then we'll introduce the primary connections. The machine will resist at first. It always does with new operators, but eventually it accepts, or you break, one or the other. How many have broken? I asked. Grimsby and Pitchfork exchanged glances. Most, Pitchfork said simply. But they weren't right, not like you. Through the fog of the drug, a spark of my old self flared up. You don't know anything about me. Don't we? Grimsby pulled out a folder thick with papers. Amos Matthew Weatherby. Born March 15, 1972, in Shreveport. Father died when you were 12, industrial accident at the chemical plant. Mother raised you and your sister alone. You enlisted at 18, served 4 years in the Army, motor pool. Honorable discharge. Married Jennifer Cates in 99, divorced 2018. One daughter, Sarah, who you'd die for but barely talk to because the divorce was ugly and you blame yourself. Each fact hit like a small punch, even through the drug haze. You've been driving trucks since you were 22, he continued. Started with short hauls, worked your way up to long distance. You've driven through 43 states, logged over 2 million miles. You've never had a serious accident, never failed a drug test, never missed a delivery deadline, until tonight. This won't be missed, I said. When I don't report in, you already have, Grimsby interrupted, holding up my phone again. You've told dispatch the delivery was complete, that you're taking a few personal days. You've even sent a text to your daughter saying you're going fishing, something you've been promising to do for months but never actually do. I wanted to argue, but the evidence was right there on the screen. Messages in my voice, my words, my patterns. Now then, Grimsby said, setting the phone aside. Shall we begin? They moved me to the chair. I didn't resist, couldn't or wouldn't. The distinction still seemed irrelevant. The straps were leather, old but well maintained. They secured my wrists, ankles, chest, and forehead. Not tight enough to hurt, just tight enough that I couldn't move. Pitchfork wheeled over a cart with medical equipment. Some of it looked standard. IV bags, syringes, monitoring equipment. But other pieces were wrong. Needles that were too long, tubes that pulsed with their own rhythm. Devices that looked more like torture implements than medical tools. The first injection is the worst, Grimsby said, preparing a syringe filled with something that looked like motor oil mixed with mercury. It's a synthetic compound based on something we extracted from the deposit. It helps your nervous system accept the machine's integration. Think of it as a translator, allowing two incompatible systems to communicate. The needle went into my arm. For a moment, nothing. Then fire. Not pain exactly, but a sensation of every nerve in my body suddenly becoming aware of every other nerve. I could feel my own circulatory system, the pulse of blood through vessels I didn't know I had. I could feel the electrical impulses in my brain, little lightning storms of thought and sensation. "Interesting," Grimsby said, watching the monitors. "Your compatibility rating is even higher than we projected. 93%. That's remarkable." Through the overwhelming sensation, I managed to focus on his face. "What happens when we reach 100? Then you and the machine become one system," he said, "and we can finally harvest what's in that deposit." "What is it?" I gasped. "What's down there?" Grimsby smiled that too wide smile again. "Would you believe me if I told you it's the future? Not metaphorically. Literally, a substance that exists outside our normal temporal framework. Something that fell to Earth millions of years ago and has been waiting, growing, becoming. You're insane. Perhaps, but we're also right. The preliminary samples we've extracted have properties that shouldn't exist. They respond to thought, they adapt to need, they remember things that haven't happened yet. Imagine what we could do with a full harvest. Medical technology that could cure anything. Computers that could solve problems before they occur. Weapons that could end wars before they begin. Pitchfork was attaching electrodes to my head now. Dozens of them, each one a tiny point of cold against my skin. "But here's the thing," Grimsby continued. "The substance doesn't respond to normal extraction methods. It needs to be coaxed out, persuaded, and it only responds to consciousness, specifically human consciousness that's been modified, enhanced. That's what the machine does. It amplifies human awareness to the point where you can interface with something that exists partially outside our reality." The monitors around us came alive with data, waves and spikes and patterns that meant nothing to me but made Grimsby practically dance with excitement. "Look at that," he exclaimed. "Your brain is already starting to adapt. Most subjects take hours to show this level of integration." I wanted to tell him to stop, that this was wrong, that I didn't consent to any of this. But the words wouldn't come. The drug, the injections, the electrodes, they were all working together to disconnect me from my own voice. That's when I heard it, or felt it, or experienced it. There's no good word for the sensation. It was like something vast and ancient had noticed me. Not with eyes or any sense I could name, but with a kind of awareness that made every cell in my body want to hide. "Ah," Grimsby said softly. "It knows you're here. The deposit. It's responding to your presence." The barn suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in, but also larger, like it extended beyond its physical dimensions into spaces that shouldn't exist. "We should slow down," Pitchfork said, and for the first time I heard uncertainty in his voice. The readings are perfect," Grimsby interrupted. "Look at the compatibility index, 95% and climbing. He's the one. After all this time, all those failures, we finally have the right operator." Something was happening to my vision. The edges were starting to blur, but not like losing focus. More like gaining too much focus, seeing things that were always there but hidden. The air had texture now, patterns and currents that moved with purpose. The concrete floor wasn't solid. It was a collection of particles held together by shared agreement, and beneath it, far beneath, something massive and patient and hungry. "Can you feel it?" Grimsby asked, leaning close. His breath smelled like formaldehyde and coffee. "The deposit. It's been waiting so long for someone who could hear it properly." I could feel it. It was like standing at the edge of an ocean made of thoughts and possibilities. Waves of potential futures crashed against the shores of now, each one bringing fragments of what could be. I saw myself in dozens of variations, completing this task, failing, dying, becoming something else entirely. All equally real, all equally possible, until the moment of choosing collapsed them into a single truth. "The machine is ready," Pitchfork announced. He'd been working on it while Grimsby monitored me, attaching the components from the crates, running diagnostics, preparing it for me. They moved my chair. No, the chair moved itself, gliding on hidden tracks I hadn't noticed. It lined up with the cab of the machine, and I could see the integration points clearly now, needles and tubes and connectors that would merge my nervous system with its mechanical one. "This next part requires your cooperation," Grimsby said. "The machine can't take you. You have to give yourself to it. It's a safety feature the original designers built in. Prevents unwilling integration." "Then I won't," I managed to say through numb lips. "Won't you?" Grimsby moved one of the monitors where I could see it. On the screen was a video feed, my apartment complex in Broussard. The camera was focused on Unit 12B, my unit. "Your daughter is visiting this weekend, isn't she? Surprise visit for your birthday. She didn't tell you because you haven't been answering her calls, but she's driving down from LSU tomorrow morning." My heart, already racing from the drugs, somehow found another gear. "Now, we're not going to hurt her," Grimsby continued. "That would be crude, unnecessary. But imagine her confusion when she finds your apartment empty, your truck gone, no forwarding address. Imagine her thinking you finally did it. Finally just disappeared like you've been threatening to do since the divorce. Imagine her believing you abandoned her. You bastard. Or," he continued as if I hadn't spoken, "you cooperate. You help us extract what we need from the deposit. It will take a few days, maybe a week. Then we let you go. You'll have some memory gaps. The integration process isn't kind to short-term memory, but you'll be alive, functional. You can tell your daughter you were sick, had a reaction to something, lost a few days. She'll be concerned, but relieved. Much better than the alternative." I looked at the machine. Its cab was open, waiting. The integration chair aligned perfectly with my current position. All it would take was accepting it, letting it in, becoming part of it. "What happens to the others?" I asked. "The drivers who didn't work out?" Grimsby and Pitchfork exchanged another glance. "They're still here," Pitchfork said quietly. "In a manner of speaking." "What does that mean?" "The machine keeps impressions," Grimsby explained. "Neural patterns, fragments of consciousness. Every operator leaves something behind, and the machine remembers. It learns from each failure. That's why the compatibility requirements are so specific now. The machine has developed preferences." "It's haunted," I said. "You're telling me the machine is haunted." "Such a primitive term," Grimsby scoffed. "It's simply retained data from previous operators. Think of it as experiential learning. Each failed integration teaches it more about what it needs." The chair began moving again, closer to the machine. I could hear it now, not with my ears but with something deeper. A humming that resonated in my bones, in the spaces between my thoughts. It was old, this machine, older than its manufacture date. Like it had absorbed years from somewhere else, some when else. "The deposit told us how to fix it," Grimsby said, his voice taking on a reverent tone. "In dreams at first, then more directly. It wants to be harvested, you see, wants to be used, but only by the right hands, the right mind. It's been waiting so long." The drugs were wearing off slightly, or maybe my body was adapting. Either way, I was starting to feel more like myself. And myself was terrified. "Please," I said, "you don't understand what you're doing. Don't we?" Grimsby moved closer, checking the connections one more time. Mr. Weatherby, we understand perfectly. We're opening a door. What comes through depends entirely on the operator. That's why we chose you. 23 years of staying awake when you should sleep, of pushing through when you should stop, of delivering no matter what. You have the will to control what comes through that door. And if I don't? He smiled that terrible smile one more time. Then we'll find another driver, and another, and another, until one of them does. But I have faith in you, Amos. You're special. The machine's cab was so close now I could feel heat radiating from it. Not mechanical heat, something else. Like fever dreams and bad decisions and roads that don't appear on any map. Begin the integration, Grimsby commanded. Pitchfork activated something on his control panel, and the chair lurched forward the final few inches. The integration ports aligned with points on my body I didn't know existed. Not just the obvious places like spine and skull, but smaller connections at wrists, behind my knees, along my ribs. Each one was a tiny violation, a breaking of the boundary between self and not self. The first connection was like drowning in reverse. Instead of water filling my lungs, something else filled my nerves. Awareness that wasn't mine. Memories of operations I'd never performed. The ghost taste of other drivers who'd sat in this chair before me. I could feel their terror, their resistance, their eventual breaking. Some had lasted minutes, others hours. One had made it 3 days before his mind simply stopped. Compatibility at 97%, Pitchfork announced. Neural mapping is accelerated. He's taking to it faster than anyone. I wanted to scream, but my vocal cords weren't entirely mine anymore. The machine was exploring me from the inside, learning my responses, my limits. It was curious in a way that machines shouldn't be, poking at memories, examining fears, cataloging every moment of weakness I'd ever experienced. And through it all, I could feel the deposit. Miles below, through rock and water and time, something vast and impossible was stirring. It knew I was here. It had been waiting. "Can you hear it?" Grimsby asked, leaning close to one of the monitors. "The deposit is responding. Look at these readings." I could more than hear it. I was beginning to understand it. The substance wasn't from here, not just geographically, but dimensionally. It was runoff from somewhere else, somewhere the rules were different. It had been seeping into our reality for millions of years, slowly accumulating, waiting for the right conditions to be activated. The machine shuddered, and suddenly I could see through its sensors. Not just visual spectrum, but electromagnetic, thermal, something that might have been temporal. The barn wasn't just a barn anymore. I could see its history. Construction in 1963, decades of use storing farming equipment, the slow decay, then Grimsby and Pitchfork's arrival 18 months ago. I could see possible futures too. The barn burning, the barn collapsing, the barn becoming something else entirely. "Begin movement protocol," Grimsby ordered. My arms moved. No, the machine's arms moved, but I felt them as mine. Hydraulic fluid was my blood. Metal joints were my bones. I reached out with a claw that could crush a car and picked up a pen from the table with perfect delicacy. "Excellent control," Pitchfork murmured. "We can proceed to the extraction site." "No," I managed to say, though I wasn't sure if the word came from my mouth or through the machine's speakers. "Won't dig, won't help you." "You don't have a choice anymore," Grimsby said. "The integration is past the point of voluntary control. The machine will do what it was designed to do, and you'll do it because you and the machine are becoming one system." He was right. I could feel my resistance weakening, not from the drugs, but from something more fundamental. The boundary between Amos Weatherby and the excavator-class biological interface unit was dissolving. Its imperatives were becoming my desires. Its purpose was becoming my need. But there was something else, too. The other drivers, the ones who had failed, they weren't gone. They were here in the machine's memory, and they were angry. I could feel their rage at being used, discarded, absorbed. They whispered warnings, showed me flashes of what they'd seen before they broke. The deposit wasn't just material. It was aware. It was hungry, and it had been manipulating Grimsby and Pitchfork from the beginning, using their greed and ambition to create the conditions for its release. "We need to move now," Pitchfork said suddenly. "The integration window is optimal." The machine began to move. Not walked. Machines don't walk. But it locomoted, tracks gripping the concrete as it headed for the barn door. I was inside it and outside it simultaneously, feeling every rotation of every gear, while also watching from a distance as my body remained in the chair, connected by countless cables and tubes that stretched like umbilical cords. The door exploded outward as the machine pushed through. Outside, the swamp was different through the machine's sensors. I could see the life in it. Not just plants and animals, but something else. The deposit's influence had been seeping up for years, decades, changing things in subtle ways. The cypress trees were too symmetrical. The water moved in patterns that followed no current. And there were things in the water that shouldn't exist, fragments of other possibilities that had leaked through. "The extraction site is 3.2 miles northeast." Grimsby's voice came through speakers inside the cab. "Follow the preset route." But I wasn't following anything anymore. The machine and I were one thing now, and that thing had its own ideas. I could feel the deposit calling, yes, but I could also feel what it really was. Not treasure, not technology. A wound. A place where something had torn through from elsewhere and the tear had never properly healed. "What are you doing?" Grimsby's voice had lost its calm. "That's not the route." I was moving toward the house instead, the old plantation home where this had all started. Because now I could see what my integrated senses revealed. There were people inside. Lots of them. In the basement that shouldn't exist, through floors that looked solid but weren't. "Stop him!" Grimsby screamed. Pitchfork was at his control station, trying to override the machine's systems. But the machine had learned from all its previous operators. It knew how to resist external control now. It had been broken and rebuilt so many times that it had developed its own kind of consciousness, primitive but real, and it was angry too. I tore through the wall of the house like paper. Inside, the smell that had bothered me earlier was overwhelming even through the machine's filtered sensors. Because the basement wasn't just a basement. It was a laboratory, a storage facility, a charnel house. The failed operators weren't gone. They were here, preserved in tanks of that same black fluid I'd seen in the crates. Still alive in some horrible way, their nervous systems kept functional because the machine needed their patterns, their memories, their essence. 13 tanks, 13 drivers who had come before me. Their eyes were open, aware, tracking the machine's movement. Some had been here for years. "You're ruining everything." Grimsby had appeared in the doorway, holding something that looked like a remote control. "Years of work. Do you have any idea what we've sacrificed?" "You sacrifice them," I said through the machine's speakers. My real mouth couldn't form words anymore. Too many tubes. "You fed them to this thing. They were necessary. The deposit requires specific neural patterns to activate. Each failure taught us more about what was needed. You're the culmination of all that learning." He pressed a button on his remote. Pain exploded through every nerve, the machines and mine together. Override protocols, hidden deep in the programming. The machine began moving against my will, turning back toward the door. But the other drivers, the ones in the tanks, they were connected too. Residually, through the machine's memory. And they didn't want the deposit opened. They'd seen what was on the other side. Together, 13 ghost minds and 1 living one, we fought the override. The machine shuddered, caught between commands. Servos whined, hydraulics leaked, something deep in its core began to overheat. "Full override," Grimsby screamed. "Maximum compliance." The pain doubled, tripled. I could feel my nervous system burning out, synapses firing randomly. This was how the others had broken. Too much input, too much control, too much violation of the boundaries of self. But I'd driven through worse. 23 years of fighting sleep on empty highways, of pushing through exhaustion and hallucinations and the hypnotic sameness of white lines passing under wheels. I'd learned to compartmentalize, to put the pain in a box and keep driving. The machine responded to that. It recognized the pattern, persistence despite suffering. That's what it had been searching for all along. Not just compatibility, but capability. The ability to keep functioning when functioning should be impossible. I turned the machine's cutting arm toward the tanks. Grimsby realized what I was doing a second too late. "No!" Glass shattered. Black fluid poured out, and with it, the preserved drivers. They didn't breathe, couldn't breathe, but they moved, crawled, reached out with arms that remembered being human. Pitchfork ran, just turned and sprinted into the swamp without looking back. Grimsby stood his ground, still pressing buttons on his remote, but the machine wasn't listening anymore. It had what it wanted. An operator who could hear the deposit's true voice, who could understand what it really was. I moved the machine back outside, leaving Grimsby screaming at his broken toys. The preserved drivers would deal with him, or they wouldn't. Either way, he'd created his own fate. The deposit was calling stronger now, begging to be released. Through the machine's deep sensors, I could see it clearly. A cancer in reality. A place where something that should never have existed had taken root. If it was released, if it was harvested and spread, it wouldn't bring the future. It would bring the end of causality, the collapse of the barriers between what is and what isn't. The machine knew how to destroy it. That knowledge had been built into its deepest programming, hidden beneath layers of exploitation. The original designers had known what they were dealing with. They'd built a weapon disguised as a tool, hoping someone would eventually use it for its true purpose. I moved toward the extraction site. 3.2 miles through swamp that got stranger with every yard. Trees that grew downward, water that flowed uphill, animals that existed in too many dimensions at once. The deposit's influence was stronger here, reality wearing thin. The extraction site was exactly what I'd expected. A hole in the world. Not just the ground, but in existence itself. It went down forever and nowhere simultaneously. The deposit wasn't at the bottom because there was no bottom. It was the hole itself, the absence that defined everything around it. The machine's self-destruct system was elegant in its simplicity. Not an explosion, but an implosion. It would collapse in on itself, creating a brief point of absolute density that would seal the hole, cauterize the wound in reality. But it needed an operator to initialize it, a consciousness to guide the collapse to ensure it sealed properly. The operator wouldn't survive. Couldn't survive. They would be compressed along with everything else, becoming part of the seal. I thought about Sarah, my daughter, who I barely talked to anymore. She'd be at my apartment tomorrow, finding it empty. She'd think I'd abandoned her. but that was better than what would happen if the deposit was released. I began the initialization sequence. The machine's consciousness, such as it was, didn't resist. It was tired of being used, tired of being forced to break people. This was a good death, a purposeful one. "Stop!" Grimsby's voice came through the radio. He'd made it to his equipment somehow, was trying one last override. "You don't understand. The deposit is the future. It's evolution. It's humanity's next step. It's not from here," I said through the speakers. "It's not for us. It's something that failed somewhere else, trying to take root here, and I'm not letting it." The sequence engaged. The machine began to fold in on itself, reality bending around it. I felt every part of it crushing down, and every part of me crushing with it. The pain was beyond description, but also beyond relevance. Pain was just another road to drive through. The whole fought back, trying to expand, to consume. But the machine's implosion was stronger, more focused. We collapsed together. Machine, operator, and wound in the world, becoming a single point of ending that was also a new beginning. The last thing I saw through the machine's dying sensors was the swamp returning to normal. Water flowing the right direction, trees growing upward, reality reasserting its rules. And then nothing. They found my truck 3 days later, parked on a side road near the Thibodeau mill. No sign of struggle, no sign of me. Just an abandoned rig with a delivery manifest for an address that didn't exist. Sarah got a letter a week after that. I'd written it months ago, left it with a lawyer with instructions to send it if I ever disappeared. It told her I loved her, that I was proud of her, that sometimes people have to make choices that don't make sense from the outside. It told her not to look for me, that I'd gone somewhere necessary. She probably thinks I'm dead. She's not entirely wrong. The thing is, the seal isn't perfect. Can't be. The hole is too deep, the wound too old. It needs maintenance, someone to watch it, to reinforce it when it weakens. That's what I am now. Not Amos Weatherby anymore, not really. Part of the seal, part of the machine's ghost, part of the 13 drivers who came before. We're the scar tissue over the wound, the thing that keeps it closed. Sometimes, truckers pass by on the old road near the mill. They report strange things, lights that don't belong, sounds that don't make sense, the feeling of being watched. Some say they've seen a figure by the road, tall and thin and wrong, waving them away. That's me, or what's left of me, warning them off, keeping them from getting too close to where the hole used to be. It's not a bad existence, really. Still driving in a way, still delivering. Just delivering safety instead of cargo, keeping the roads clear of things that shouldn't be there. Grimsby and Pitchfork were never found. The house was empty when the police finally investigated. Just broken tanks and abandoned equipment. No bodies, no evidence of crime. They probably ran. Probably found another deposit somewhere, probably tried again. There are more holes in the world than just this one. But this one is covered, sealed, protected. 23 years I drove trucks. Now I drive something else. I keep the barrier between what is and what shouldn't be. It's the most important delivery I've ever made, and one that never ends. Sometimes, late at night, when the boundary gets thin, I can almost remember what it felt like to be just human. To worry about normal things like bills and schedules and ex-wives. It seems so small now, so simple. But I miss it. I miss being small enough that the universe made sense. Now I know better. Now I know that the universe is full of holes, full of places where things that failed elsewhere try to take root here. And someone has to watch them. Someone has to keep them closed. Might as well be a trucker. We're used to long, lonely roads that never really end. We're used to delivering what needs to be delivered no matter the cost. The Bayou Rest truck stop sat 12 miles outside of Lafayette on Highway 90, one of those 24-hour operations that never really sleeps, but never really wakes up either. I'd been stopping there for 15 years, long enough to watch it slowly decay from a decent rest area into the kind of place you only visited when you had no other choice. The showers still worked, mostly. The coffee was still hot, usually. And the parking lot was big enough that you could find a corner away from the lot lizards and the dealers if you knew where to look. My name's Hiram Stonefield, and I'd been running petroleum tankers through Louisiana since '99. It's specialized work. Hazmat certification, extra insurance, routes that keep you away from schools and hospitals. The pay was good enough to make the risk worthwhile, and after 2 decades I'd gotten comfortable with the routine. Maybe too comfortable. It was a Thursday night in September, still hot enough that the asphalt was soft under your boots even after dark. I'd just finished a run from the ExxonMobil refinery in Baton Rouge to a distribution center in Lake Charles. Empty now, running light, planning to pick up another load in the morning. But I needed a shower first. 3 days of Louisiana heat and petroleum fumes had left me feeling like I was wearing a second skin made of sweat and diesel. The Bayou Rest had 6 shower stalls and a concrete block addition, tacked onto the main building like an afterthought. You paid the attendant $15, got a towel that had seen better decades, and a key attached to a piece of wood the size of a license plate. The number on mine was barely visible anymore, worn down by thousands of hands, but I could make out a 4. The attendant that night was new, or at least new to me. A woman, maybe 40, with stringy gray-blonde hair and the kind of deep-set wrinkles you get from smoking 2 packs a day for 20 years. She wore a name tag that said Orpha Thornwick in faded letters. When she handed me the key, her fingers lingered on mine just a second too long, and she gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Stall 4, she said, her voice rough as gravel. "Careful with the hot water handle. It sticks sometimes. Gotta jiggle it just right." I'd used stall 4 before. They all had their quirks. Broken tiles, rust stains, that persistent smell of mildew that no amount of bleach could kill. But after 3 days on the road, I wasn't picky. The shower area was empty when I walked in, which wasn't unusual for a Thursday near midnight. Most drivers tried to time their stops for major truck stops with better facilities. The Bayou Rest was for people who'd mistimed their hours or, like me, knew it well enough to navigate its failures. I picked stall 4, hung my clean clothes on the hook that was barely clinging to the door, and set my wallet, keys, and phone on the little shelf they'd installed above the coat hook, supposedly out of the splash zone. My wedding ring went there too, though the marriage it represented had been dead for 3 years. Still wore it though. Habit, I guess. Or maybe armor against the kind of attention you sometimes got at truck stops. The hot water handle did stick, just like Orpha had said. But once I got it going, the pressure was better than expected. Hot water sluiced off 3 days of road grime, and for a few minutes, everything was perfect. Just me, the steam, and the white noise of water on concrete. That's probably why I didn't hear the door open. The first sign something was wrong was a shadow moving past the gap under the stall door. Quick, purposeful. Not the shuffling gait of another tired trucker, but someone moving with intent. "Occupied," I called out, though it should have been obvious from the running water. No response. But the shadow stopped right outside my stall. I turned off the water, suddenly very aware that I was naked, wet, and had no weapon closer than my pocket knife, which was in my jeans hanging on the hook. "Someone there?" I asked. Still nothing, but I could hear breathing now, slow, deliberate, like someone trying to be quiet but not quite managing it. I reached for my towel, eyes fixed on the door. The lock was a simple slide bolt, rusty but functional. At least it had been when I'd closed it. That's when I noticed my phone was gone. The shelf above the coat hook was empty except for my ring. Wallet gone, keys gone, phone gone. But the ring, worthless to anyone but me, was still there, placed dead center on the shelf like a message. "Hey!" I shouted, yanking the towel around my waist. "Hey, you took my stuff!" The shadow moved away from the door, fast. I heard footsteps, running now, not trying to be quiet anymore. I fumbled with the lock, hands still slippery with soap. It stuck, wouldn't budge. I slammed my shoulder against it once, twice. The third time, the whole mechanism tore free from the rotted wood, and the door burst open. The shower area was empty. The main door was just swinging closed. I ran after them, barefoot, wearing nothing but a towel, water still streaming from my hair. I burst through the door into the truck stop's main building. A few late-night customers turned to stare. A trucker in a towel wasn't the weirdest thing they'd seen at the Bayou Rest, but it was still worth a look. "Someone stole my wallet!" I shouted. "My keys! Did anyone see someone run through here?" Blank stares. A few shrugs. One old-timer pointed toward the front entrance. "Skinny fellow went out that way," he said. "Moving quick." I ran outside. The parking lot was vast, poorly lit, full of shadows between the rigs. Whoever had taken my stuff could be anywhere. They could be in any of the 50-plus trucks parked there, or in a car, or on foot heading into the scraggly woods that pressed against the back of the lot. And I was standing there in a towel, dripping wet, with no phone to call the police, no keys to check if my truck was secure, no wallet with my cards and CDL and everything else that proved I was who I said I was. I went back inside, ignoring the stares, and approached the counter where Orpha was reading a magazine like nothing had happened. "Someone stole my stuff from the shower," she said. "I need to use your phone to call the police." She looked up slowly, that same smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Phone? Phones for employees only. This is an emergency. Someone just robbed me." "You got any proof?" she asked. "Can't just be calling the police every time someone says they got robbed. Bad for business. You saw me go in there with my clothes. Now I'm standing here in a towel. What more proof do you need?" She shrugged. "Maybe you left your stuff in your truck. Happens sometimes. Drivers get confused." I wanted to grab her, shake her, make her understand. But I was already a half-naked man causing a scene. Adding assault to the situation wouldn't help. "Look," I said, forcing myself to stay calm. "My keys are gone. I can't even get into my truck to get my spare phone. Can you at least call my company, let them know what happened?" "What company's that?" "Pelican Petroleum Transport. The numbers—" "Don't know it," she said, turning back to her magazine. "Sorry." One of the other customers, a younger guy in a Peterbilt cap, took pity on me. "Here," he said, offering his phone. "Call whoever you need." I called my dispatcher first, got voicemail. It was after midnight, after all. Left a message explaining the situation. Then I tried to call the police, but the guy who'd lent me the phone got nervous. "Look, man, I don't want to get involved with cops," he said, taking his phone back. "No offense, but I got my own issues." He walked away quickly, leaving me standing there. That's when I heard it. My truck starting up. The sound of a diesel engine is like a fingerprint when you've driven it long enough. Every engine has its own rhythm, its own particular collection of rattles and hums. That was definitely my Freightliner Cascadia, and someone had just turned the key. I ran outside again, towel flapping, feet slapping on the warm asphalt. My truck was parked in the back row, and I could see the lights were on. Someone was in my cab. I sprinted toward it, shouting, but the truck was already moving. Slowly at first, then picking up speed. Whoever was driving didn't know the quirks. I could hear them grinding the gears, over-revving. but they were figuring it out. The truck pulled out of the lot and onto the highway, leaving me standing there in nothing but a towel, watching my entire livelihood disappear into the Louisiana night. I turned back toward the truck stop. Orpha was standing in the doorway, watching. Still had that smile. "Told you should have been more careful," she said. "Lots of bad people around here at night." That's when I knew she was in on it. The way she'd touched my hand when giving me the key. She'd been checking for a ring, for a tan line, for any sign that someone might come looking for me quickly if I disappeared. "You set me up," I said. She shrugged. "Can't prove nothing. You're just some trucker who lost his keys. Happens all the time." I spent the next hour trying to get help. Most of the truckers were sympathetic, but unwilling to get involved. A few offered me clothes. I ended up with an ill-fitting t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants that were way too short. One guy let me use his phone again to call the police, but when they finally showed up, they treated it like a routine theft. "You got insurance?" the cop asked, not even getting out of his cruiser. "Yeah, but then file a claim. Without proof of who took it, not much we can do. Could have been anyone." The shower attendant, Orpha Thornwick, she was in on it. The cop laughed. "Orpha? She's been working here for years, never had a complaint. You sure you didn't just misplace your keys?" They left without even taking a formal report. I was stranded. No money, no ID, no vehicle, no phone. Just standing in a truck stop parking lot in borrowed clothes that didn't fit. Watching other truckers pull in and out, living their normal lives while mine had just imploded. That's when I saw him. He was standing by the tree line at the back of the lot, barely visible in the shadows. Tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. He raised one hand, not a wave, more like a signal. Then he held up something that caught the light. My keys. He wanted me to follow him. Everything in my gut said it was a trap, that this was part 2 of whatever had started in that shower stall. But what choice did I have? Without those keys, even if I found my truck, I couldn't drive it. And whoever this was, they had answers. I walked toward him, trying to look casual, like I was just stretching my legs. As I got closer, I could see him better. Young, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of lean build you get from manual labor rather than the gym. His face was sharp, angular, with deep-set eyes that never seemed to blink. "Lemuel Crowfeather," he said when I was close enough to hear his whisper. "And you're in more trouble than you know." "Give me my keys," I said, reaching for them. He pulled them back, shaking his head. "Not yet. First, you need to understand what's happening here. Your truck's already gone. By now, it's probably halfway to Morgan City. They've got a chop shop there, specializes in commercial vehicles. Your Freightliner will be in pieces by dawn." "You're one of them," I said. "You took my stuff." "I took your stuff to save your life," Lemuel said. "If I hadn't, you'd be in that truck right now, probably with your throat cut, bleeding out while they drove you to the bayou." "What are you talking about?" He looked around nervously, then motioned for me to follow him deeper into the tree line. Against my better judgment, I did. We pushed through scraggly bushes and hanging moss until we were maybe 50 yards from the parking lot, hidden from view but still able to see the lights of the truck stop through the trees. "The Bayou Rest isn't just a truck stop," Lemuel said, sitting on a fallen log. "It's a hunting ground. They pick truckers who fit a profile, traveling alone, no family, checking in regularly, carrying valuable loads or driving expensive rigs. They've been doing it for years." "Who's they?" "Orpha Thornwick runs it. But she's got help. Her nephew, the night security guard you probably didn't even notice. The mechanic who works the late shift. A few others who come and go. They target maybe one trucker a month, never enough to form a pattern." "And you know this how?" He was quiet for a moment, then pulled up his sleeve. His forearm was covered in scars, long, deliberate cuts that had healed badly. "Because they got me 2 years ago," he said. "I was driving for Conway, had a load of electronics. They didn't just take my truck, they took me." I sat down hard on the ground, the borrowed sweatpants immediately soaking up moisture from the damp earth. "They kept me for 3 days," Lemuel continued. "There's a place about 10 miles from here, deep in the bayou. Old fishing camp that's been abandoned since Katrina. That's where they take the drivers who fight back, the ones who might cause problems. What do? Make you disappear," he said simply. "But first, they need information. Your bank accounts, your passwords, your contacts. They need to know who might come looking for you and when. Orpha's got a cousin who works for the state DMV. They can create new paperwork, make it look like you sold your truck legitimately. By the time anyone realizes something's wrong, the trail's cold." "How did you get away?" "I didn't," he said. "They let me go after they'd drained my accounts, sold my truck, destroyed my credit. They knew I couldn't prove anything. My word against theirs, and they've got the whole parish in their pocket. Sheriff's department, local judges. Everyone either's in on it or too scared to act." "So why are you here?" "I never left," he said. "Been living in these woods, watching them, waiting. I knew eventually they'd target the wrong person, someone who might actually be able to stop them." I laughed bitterly. "And you think that's me? I'm standing here in borrowed clothes with no phone, no money, no truck. I'm nobody." "You're Hiram Stonefield," he said. "You've got a daughter in Shreveport, Emma, right? Just started her senior year of high school. Your ex-wife remarried last year, moved to Dallas. You've got a brother in the Army, stationed at Fort Polk. People who'll notice if you vanish. How do you know all that?" "Same way I know you've got $43,000 in your savings account, that you're 3 payments away from owning that Freightliner outright, and that you've been texting with a woman named Caroline from a dating app for the past 2 weeks." My blood went cold. "You went through my phone." "I had to know if you were worth saving," he said. "Most of the truckers they target are ghosts. No real connections. No one to miss them. But you've got ties. You've got people who'll raise hell if you disappear. So what? You're going to help me out of the goodness of your heart?" "No," he said. "I'm going to help you because I want them stopped. And you're going to help me because if you don't, by tomorrow morning, you won't exist anymore. At least not as Hiram Stonefield." He stood up, brushing dirt off his pants. "Your truck's gone. Can't get that back tonight. But your phone and wallet are hidden in the truck stop. I can show you where, but first, we need to deal with Orpha." "Deal with her how?" "She's got records," Lemuel said. "Keeps them in a lockbox under the counter. Names, dates, vehicle information, everything they've taken over the years. We get that, we've got proof. Why haven't you gotten it before?" "Because I can't go in there," he said. "She knows my face. They all do. But you're fresh. You're just another victim. She won't expect you to come back, especially not so soon." "Come back? I never left. I've been standing in that parking lot for the past hour." "No," Lemuel said, checking his watch. "You've been gone for 3 hours. It's almost 4 a.m. That couldn't be right. I'd gone into the shower around midnight. Even with everything that had happened, it couldn't have been more than an hour, maybe 90 minutes. Check the clock on the truck stop wall when we go back," he said. "Time moves funny when you're in shock. You've been standing out here talking to me for longer than you think." I wanted to argue, but my legs were stiff, and I was suddenly aware of how cold I was. The September heat had finally broken, and the pre-dawn air was cool and damp. "So, what's the plan?" I asked. "Simple," Lemuel said. "You go back in, distract Orpha, get her away from the counter, I'll slip in through the back, grab the lockbox, and we're gone." "That's it? That's your master plan? You got a better one?" I didn't. We made our way back to the edge of the parking lot. The truck stop looked different in the pre-dawn darkness. Fewer trucks, fewer lights. The place had the abandoned quality, like something pretending to be normal, but failing. "Your phone and wallet are in the dumpster behind the building," Lemuel said. "Wrapped in a plastic bag, stuffed inside a pizza box. They always dump them there, retrieve them later when things calm down." "Why not just destroy them?" "Information," he said. "They go through everything first. Contacts, photos, messages. Looking for leverage, for ways to access accounts, for people who might be problems. And my keys?" He handed them to me. "These are useless without your truck, but you'll want them anyway, sentimental value." He was right. My truck key had other keys on it. My apartment, my storage unit, a key to my brother's place. Things that made me feel like I still had a life to go back to. "Give me 5 minutes," Lemuel said. "Then go in. Keep her talking for at least 3 minutes. About what? Doesn't matter. Just keep her eyes on you, not on what's happening behind her." He disappeared into the shadows, moving with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. I counted to 300, then walked back into the truck stop. Orpha was still behind the counter, but she wasn't alone anymore. A man stood next to her, big, muscular, wearing a security guard uniform that didn't quite fit right. He had the look of someone who'd been hired for their size, not their brains. "Well, look who's back," Orpha said. "Thought you'd given up and walked on." "I want my stuff," I said. "I know you have it." "Already told you, don't know nothing about your stuff." "Then you won't mind if I look around," I said, starting toward the counter. The security guard stepped forward, one hand moving to the baton on his belt. "Store's closing soon. Time for you to go." "Store's 24 hours, I said. "Sign says so right outside." "Sign's old," Orpha said. "We close when I say we close." I saw movement behind them, Lemuel sliding along the back wall. He needed more time. "I know what you're doing," I said loudly. "I know about the other truckers, the ones who disappeared." Orpha's expression didn't change, but the security guard's hand tightened on his baton. "You're talking crazy," she said. "Earl, I think this man might be on drugs. Might need to call the sheriff, have him checked out." Earl, apparently that was the security guard's name, pulled out his phone. "Go ahead," I said. "Call them. I'll tell them about the fishing camp, about what happens to the drivers who don't cooperate." Now, Orpha's expression did change. Her eyes narrowed and she leaned forward. "You don't know nothing," she said quietly. "You're just some trucker having a bad night." "Am I? Then why is Lemuel Crowfeather helping me?" The name hit them like a physical blow. Earl actually stepped back, and Orpha's face went pale. "Lemuel's dead," she said. "Died 2 years ago. Drove his truck into the bayou drunk." "That's the story you spread," I said. "But he's very much alive, and he's been watching you." Behind them, Lemuel had reached the counter. He was working on something underneath, the lockbox, presumably. "You're lying," Orpha said, but her voice was uncertain now. "He told me about your cousin at the DMV," I said. "About the chop shop in Morgan City, about how you pick your targets. Want me to keep going?" Earl moved toward me, baton now in his hand. "Think it's time you left, friend?" "Without my property? I don't think so." "Your property's gone," Orpha said, recovering some of her composure. "Whatever you think you lost, it ain't here. And if you keep making trouble, you might lose more than just your wallet." That is when the lights went out. the entire truck stop plunged into darkness. Not just the main lights, everything. The hum of refrigerators stopped. The coffee makers went silent. Even the emergency exit signs went dark. I heard Orpha curse, heard Earl fumbling for a flashlight, and in the darkness, I heard Lemuel's voice just barely audible. "Run!" I turned and bolted for the door, crashing through it just as Earl's flashlight beam swept across where I'd been standing. Behind me, I heard Orpha screaming, not in fear, but in rage. "Find him, both of them, they're here somewhere!" I ran into the parking lot, but instead of heading for the trees where I'd met Lemuel, I went the opposite direction, toward the dumpster he'd mentioned. If my phone was really there, I needed it. The dumpster reeked of rotting food and diesel fuel. I held my breath and started pulling out bags, looking for pizza boxes. Found 3 before I found the right one, and sure enough, there was a plastic bag with my phone and wallet inside. The phone was dead, of course, but the wallet still had everything: my cash, my cards, my CDL. Small victories. "Hey!" Earl's flashlight beam caught me. He was running toward me, baton raised. I grabbed the nearest thing, a broken piece of rebar from beside the dumpster, and stood my ground. He swung first, the baton whistling past my head as I ducked. I brought the rebar up, caught him in the ribs. He grunted, but didn't go down, grabbed my wrist with his free hand. We wrestled for a moment. Him trying to bring the baton down on my head, me trying to keep the rebar between us. Then Lemuel appeared out of nowhere, carrying something heavy. He brought it down on Earl's head, not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to drop him. Earl crumpled to the ground, groaning. "Got it," Lemuel said, holding up a metal lockbox. "Everything's in here, years of records. Now what?" "Now we run," he said. "My car's hidden about a quarter-mile down the road. We need to get there before—" A gunshot cracked through the night. We both dove behind the dumpster as a second shot sparked off the metal. "Should have known you weren't dead, Lemuel." Orpha's voice carried across the parking lot. "Always were too stubborn to die proper." "She's got a gun," I said unnecessarily. "She's got several," Lemuel said. "Keep low, move fast, ready." We ran, zigzagging between parked trucks as more shots rang out. I heard other voices now, more of Orpha's people probably. The truck stop was waking up, but not in a way that would help us. We made it to the tree line just as headlights started flicking on across the parking lot. Lemuel led the way, moving through the underbrush like he'd memorized every root and branch. I stumbled along behind him, the lockbox clutched against my chest, branches tearing at the borrowed clothes that were already too small. "How far?" I gasped. "Not far," he said. "Keep moving." Behind us, I could hear pursuit. Not just footsteps, dogs. They'd brought out dogs. "They've got trackers," I said. "Won't help them," Lemuel said. "Trust me." We burst out of the trees onto a narrow dirt road. An old Honda Civic sat partially hidden in the bushes, covered with a camouflage tarp that Lemuel yanked away. The car looked like it had survived multiple hurricanes badly, rust eating through the wheel wells, duct tape holding the bumper on, one headlight pointing off at an odd angle. "Get in," he said, fumbling with the keys. The engine turned over on the third try, coughing to life like a sick animal. We peeled out, kicking up dirt and gravel, just as flashlight beams appeared at the tree line behind us. "Where are we going?" I asked. "First away," Lemuel said, taking a hard right onto another dirt road. "Then we need to find somewhere with the internet. Upload these records before they catch us." "Upload them where?" "Everywhere. Social media, news outlets, FBI tip line. Make it impossible to suppress." The car's suspension groaned as we hit a pothole. Something under the hood was making a grinding noise that didn't sound healthy. This car going to make it? It's made it this far, Lemuel said, which wasn't reassuring. We drove for maybe 20 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, making sure we weren't followed. Finally, Lemuel pulled into an all-night diner on the outskirts of Opelousas. The kind of place that served coffee that could strip paint and didn't ask questions about why two men showed up at 4:30 a.m. looking like they'd been through a war. They got Wi-Fi, Lemuel said. Order something. Look normal. Inside, the diner was mostly empty except for an elderly couple in a corner booth and a trucker at the counter who didn't look up from his eggs. We took a booth in the back, and I ordered coffee and toast with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Lemuel opened the lockbox using a screwdriver from his pocket. Inside were exactly what he'd promised. Records. Dozens of small notebooks, each one filled with neat handwriting. Names, dates, vehicle descriptions, amounts stolen. A catalog of crimes going back 8 years. Jesus, I whispered, flipping through one. There must be 30, 40 names here. 47, Lemuel said. I counted while you were getting your wallet. 47 drivers over 8 years. Most listed as accidents or voluntary disappearances. I found one entry that made my stomach turn. Marcus Webb, September 2019. Freightliner, Columbia. Disposed of in Bayou, Sorrel. I looked up at Lemuel. Disposed of? Not everyone cooperates, he said quietly. Some fight too hard. Some figure out too much. Those ones don't get released with destroyed credit. They just disappear completely. My name was in there too, in the most recent entry. Hiram Stonefield, September 2023. Freightliner Cascadia, in progress. We need to photograph all of this, Lemuel said, pulling out a flip phone that looked even older than his car. Every page. Then we send it everywhere we can think of. That phone doesn't have a camera, I pointed out. No, but yours does. He nodded at my phone, which I'd plugged into the diner's outlet to charge. Should have enough juice by now. I powered it on. Immediately it started buzzing with missed calls and texts. My dispatcher, wanting to know why I'd missed my pickup. My daughter, just saying hi. Caroline from the dating app, wondering if I was okay since I hadn't responded to her last message. 47 drivers, and I'd almost been 48. We spent the next hour photographing every page. The waitress refilled our coffee twice, never commenting on what we were doing. Maybe she couldn't see from her angle, or maybe she'd learned not to see things in a place like this. We need more than just photos, I said. We need someone to believe us. I know a journalist, Lemuel said. Works for the Advocate in Baton Rouge. She's been investigating missing truckers for a while. Never could prove anything, but this, he tapped the notebooks. This is proof. What's her name? Marcy something. I've got her card in the car. That's when I noticed the trucker at the counter had turned around and was watching us. He was older, maybe 60, with a grizzled beard and eyes that had seen too much. You boys look like you're in trouble, he said. We're fine, Lemuel said quickly. The trucker stood up, walked over to our booth. Up close, I could see a name patch on his shirt. Zephaniah Doomhammer. Hell of a name. I heard what you were saying, Zephaniah said quietly. About the Bayou Rest. About Orpha. You know her, I asked. Every trucker who runs through Louisiana knows about the Bayou Rest, he said. We all know to avoid it if we can, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's the only stop for 50 miles when you're running out of hours. He pulled out his own phone, showed us a photo. It was a younger man, maybe 30, standing next to a Peterbilt. My nephew, Zephaniah said. Went missing 2 years ago. Last place he was seen? The Bayou Rest. What was his name? Lemuel asked, already flipping through the notebooks. Timothy Doomhammer. Lemuel found it. October 2021. Peterbilt 579. Processed successfully. Zephaniah's face went hard. Processed. It means they got everything, Lemuel said softly. His truck, his accounts, his identity. He might still be alive, but he's not Timothy anymore, Zephaniah finished. They erased him. We're going to expose them, I said. Upload all of this, make sure everyone knows. That won't be enough, Zephaniah said. Orpha's got protection. Local cops, state officials. You upload this, it'll disappear. You'll disappear. Then what do you suggest? He smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. I suggest we handle this the old way, the trucker way, which is CB radio, he said. Every trucker in Louisiana's got one. We start spreading the word, trucker to trucker. No internet for them to scrub, no officials to suppress it. Just drivers warning drivers, like we've always done. That'll take too long? Lemuel said. No, it won't, Zephaniah said. There's a convoy heading through tonight. 150 drivers, all heading to New Orleans for a delivery. They'll be passing the Bayou Rest around dawn. If we can reach them, get them to stop and see what's really happening there. Orpha will run, I said. Not if she doesn't know they're coming, Zephaniah said. Not if she thinks it's just another morning. I looked at Lemuel. You know the place better than anyone. Could we get back there without being seen? There's a service road, he said slowly. Runs behind the truck stop. Orpha's people don't watch it because it's been officially closed for years. But I know it's still passable. Then we do both, I said. Upload everything to the journalist, but also bring the convoy. Cover all our bases. Zephaniah nodded. I'll start making calls. You boys get that evidence uploaded. We meet back here in 2 hours. He left money on the table for his meal and ours, then walked out. Through the window, I watched him climb into his Peterbilt and pull away. You trust him? Lemuel asked. Do we have a choice? We got to work. Using the diner's Wi-Fi, I uploaded every photo to 3 different cloud services, then emailed them to the journalist Lemuel knew, along with a detailed explanation of what had happened. Then I posted them on every social media platform I had, tagged every news outlet I could think of. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. The journalist, Marcy Chen, wanting to verify the information. I put her on speaker, let Lemuel tell his story. She said she'd have a photographer and a camera crew at the Bayou Rest by dawn. This is really happening, I said after hanging up. If we survive until dawn, Lemuel said, Orpha's not going to go down easy. She's got too much to lose. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you're clever, but you forgot something. Your truck's LoJack is still active. We know exactly where you are. I showed it to Lemuel. His face went pale. We need to go. Now. We threw money on the table and ran for his car, but as we reached it, we saw them. 2 pickup trucks pulling into the parking lot, moving fast. Orpha's people had found us. Back door, Lemuel said, pulling me toward the diner's rear entrance. We burst through into the pre-dawn darkness just as we heard the front door crash open behind us. The diner backed up to a drainage canal, one of those Louisiana waterways that's half river, half sewer. Without hesitation, Lemuel jumped in. The water was maybe waist deep, but the current was stronger than it looked. I jumped after him, immediately regretting it as the foul water soaked through my borrowed clothes. But we didn't have time for regret. We waded along the canal, hidden by its concrete walls, listening to the shouts from the parking lot above. They went out back, someone yelled. Check the canal." That was Orpha's voice. We moved faster, the lockbox held above my head to keep it dry. The canal ran under a road bridge about 100 yards ahead. If we could make it there. A flashlight beam swept over the water behind us. Then another. "There, in the water." We ran, or tried to run, moving through waist-deep waters like trying to sprint through molasses. I could hear them on the banks above us, keeping pace easily. That's when I heard it. The sound of air brakes. A truck was stopping on the bridge ahead. Then another, and another. Zephaniah's head appeared over the bridge railing. "Need a lift, boys?" He'd already dropped a rope. We grabbed it, let him and other hands pull us up. As we reached the bridge, I looked back to see Orpha and 3 men standing at the canal's edge, watching us escape. Even from that distance, I could see the fury on her face. The bridge was full of trucks. Not the 150 Zephaniah had promised, but at least 20. All kinds: Peterbilts, Kenworths, Freightliners, Volvos. Their drivers stood between us and Orpha's people, a wall of truckers who'd apparently gotten the message. "Every one of us has heard stories about the Bayou Rest," Zephaniah said loudly enough for Orpha to hear. "Now we know they're true." Orpha tried to look confident, but I could see her calculating. 20 truckers, all witnesses. Too many to silence, too many to buy off. And more were coming. I could hear the rumble of engines in the distance, see headlights approaching from both directions. "You don't know nothing," she called out. "Just the ravings of a disturbed man." She pointed at Lemuel. "He's been stalking my truck stop for years, harassing customers, making up stories. These notebooks say different." I held up the lockbox. 47 names, Orpha. 47 truckers over 8 years. "That's a lie." "Timothy Doomhammer," Zephaniah said, his voice hard as granite. "October 2021. You remember him?" Orpha's face twitched just slightly. "Marcus Webb," another trucker called out. "My cousin, September 2019. "Ray Hutchins," came another voice. "January 2020. "You told the cops he drove into the swamp." More names, more dates. The truckers had been keeping track, comparing notes, building their own record of who had disappeared and where they'd last been seen. "The journalist will be here soon," I said, "along with camera crews. The FBI's been notified. It's over, Orpha." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You think the local cops are going to let some outsider journalist make trouble? You think the FBI cares about a few missing truckers? They care about interstate commerce violations," Lemuel said. "They care about organized theft rings crossing state lines. They care about murder." That word, murder, hung in the air like a physical presence. "You can't prove nothing," Orpha said. But she was backing away now, her men moving with her. "We don't have to prove it all," I said. "Just enough to get real investigators looking. And once they start pulling threads..." A siren wailed in the distance, then another. Not local cops. State police, from the sound of it. Someone had been making calls. "This ain't over," Orpha snarled. "You don't know who you're messing with. We got friends in places you can't imagine." "So do we," Zephaniah said. "Every trucker in America, for starters." More trucks were arriving now, filling the road in both directions. Word had spread fast on the CB network. The convoy Zephaniah had mentioned was turning into something bigger. A gathering, a reckoning. Orpha and her men retreated to their vehicles. As they drove away, she locked eyes with me through her window. The look she gave me wasn't defeated. It was promising that this wasn't finished. "She'll run," Lemuel said. "Probably got money stashed, fake IDs ready. She's been planning for this day." "Let her run," I said. As long as she's running, she's not hunting truckers. The sun was coming up now, painting the Louisiana sky in shades of orange and pink. The state police arrived, followed shortly by the news van. Marcy Chen, the journalist, turned out to be a small woman with intense eyes and a voice recorder that never stopped running. We spent the next 3 hours telling our stories. Me, Lemuel, Zephaniah, and a dozen other truckers who'd had close calls at the Bayou Rest over the years. The notebooks were taken as evidence. The truck stop was cordoned off as a crime scene. They found things. In the back office, more records. In a storage building behind the main structure, personal effects from missing drivers. Wallets, phones, keys, all cataloged and labeled like trophies. And in Orpha's desk, a list of future targets, complete with photos and schedule information. My name had been circled in red, but they didn't find Orpha, or Earl the security guard, or the others Lemuel had identified as part of the ring. They'd vanished like smoke, leaving behind only evidence of their crimes. They had an escape plan, the lead state investigator told me. Probably had it for years. People like this, they know eventually their luck runs out. My truck was found 3 days later in Morgan City, already partially stripped. Insurance covered most of it, but I was out of work for 2 months while everything got sorted. The dating app woman, Caroline, turned out to be more understanding than I'd expected. We're still talking, taking things slow. Lemuel disappeared the day after everything went down. Left a note saying he'd done what he'd come to do, and now he needed to find a new purpose. I hope he did. Zephaniah started a trucker safety network, spreading information about dangerous stops, suspicious situations. It's all CB-based, old school, impossible to hack or suppress. The Bayou Rest is on the permanent blacklist. The FBI investigation is ongoing. They've connected the Bayou Rest ring to similar operations in 3 other states. Turns out, Orpha was part of something bigger, something that had been preying on truckers for decades. They've made some arrests, but the main players are still out there somewhere. I got a postcard last month. No return address, postmarked from Mexico. All it said was, "Not over. OT." Orpha Thornwick, letting me know she's still out there. I keep driving, changed companies, changed routes, but I'm still out here on the highways. I avoid Louisiana mostly, though sometimes work takes me through. When it does, I drive straight through. No stops. Extra fuel tanks to make sure I don't have to pull over. But here's the thing about being a trucker. We talk to each other. We share information. We watch out for our own. Every driver out here knows about the Bayou Rest now. Knows about Orpha and her crew. Knows to be careful at isolated truck stops, to stay alert in the showers, to keep their keys and phones secure. The Bayou Rest itself is closed now, has been since that morning. The building's still there, slowly being reclaimed by the swamp. Kudzus covering the walls, windows are broken, parking lots cracking apart. Sometimes truckers report seeing lights there at night, shadows moving around the abandoned structure. But no one stops to investigate. It's become a ghost story we tell, a warning disguised as legend. 6 months after everything happened, I was at a truck stop in Arkansas, a nice one, well lit, plenty of people around. I was in the shower, and for just a second, I thought I heard someone try the door handle. My blood went cold, and I was right back at the Bayou Rest, naked and vulnerable. But it was just another trucker who'd gotten the wrong stall number. He apologized through the door, moved on. I finished my shower, got dressed, walked back to my truck without incident. That's the thing about what happened. It stays with you. Every truck stop shower, every isolated rest area, every too friendly attendant who asks too many questions. You get paranoid, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe a little paranoia keeps you safe out here. I still have the lockbox. The cops made copies of everything, but they let me keep the original. 47 names of drivers who weren't as lucky as me. Sometimes I read through them, wondering about their families, their final moments, what happened to them after they were processed. There's a memorial now, unofficial but real. A tree near where the Bayou Rest used to operate, where truckers have started leaving things. Photos, CB antennas, mud flaps with company names. Tributes to the ones who didn't make it out. I stop there sometimes when I'm passing through, add a fresh American flag or clean up the area a bit. Lemuel was right about one thing. Time does move funny when you're in shock. Looking back, that whole night feels both endless and instant, like it lasted forever and happened in a blink. Sometimes I dream about it, about being in that shower, hearing footsteps, knowing something's wrong but not being able to stop it. But I also dream about what came after. The truckers on the bridge, the wall of support, the community coming together. That's the part that matters, really. Not what Orpha and her people took, but what the rest of us did about it. The truth is, trucking's always been dangerous. Long hours, lonely roads, valuable cargo. We're targets just by the nature of what we do. But we're also a brotherhood, a network that spans the entire country. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. The Bayou Rest is closed, but there are other places out there. Other Orphas waiting in other truck stops. We know that. We watch for them. We warn each other. We survive by sharing information, by refusing to be easy victims. My phone buzzes sometimes with unknown numbers, texts that say things like, "Still watching," or "See you soon." I know it's her or her people trying to scare me, trying to make me look over my shoulder. But here's what Orpha doesn't understand. I was already looking over my shoulder. Every trucker is. It's how we survive out here. We check our mirrors constantly, watch for vehicles following too close, notice when things don't feel right. That paranoia she's trying to instill? We've already got it. It's part of the job. I'm back on the road full-time now. New truck, a 2020 Freightliner Cascadia that I bought outright with the insurance money and a loan. It's got all the modern safety features, better locks, GPS tracking that I control, even a camera system that records everything around the vehicle. I still stop at truck stops, still take showers, still grab coffee at 3 a.m. from sketchy-looking places. But I'm careful, we all are now. The new drivers, the young ones just starting out, they get warned about the Bayou Rest and places like it. It's become part of the unofficial training, the stories older drivers tell to keep the rookies safe. Some think we're exaggerating, making up ghost stories. Then they see the memorial tree, read the news articles, understand that the monsters in our stories are real people doing real harm. Zephaniah's safety network has grown. There's an app now, though most of us still prefer the CB radio. Instant communication, no digital trail, no way for predators to track or hack it. Old technology keeping us safe from new threats. I never found out what happened to my original truck. Insurance said it was totaled, stripped for parts. But sometimes I wonder. Sometimes I think about it out there somewhere, wearing different plates, hauling different loads, carrying the ghost of what happened that night. The shower stall at the Bayou Rest, stall 4, that image stays with me. The rusted lock, the moldy tiles, the shelf where my belongings sat for just a moment before being stolen. Such a mundane place for life to change completely. But that's how it happens, isn't it? The worst moments come when you're vulnerable, when you're just trying to get clean after a long haul. I've thought about quitting, finding work that keeps me home, keeps me safe. But trucking's what I know. It's who I am. And maybe in a way what happened made me better at it. More aware, more careful, more connected to the community of drivers around me. We look out for each other now more than ever. If someone doesn't check in, we notice. If someone reports something suspicious, we spread the word. If someone needs help, we show up. That's what Orpha and her kind don't understand. They didn't just attack individual drivers. They attacked all of us. And we responded accordingly. The investigation's still open. Every few months, I get a call from the FBI asking if I remember any other details, if I've heard anything new. I tell them about the postcards, the texts. They say they're following leads, that they'll find her eventually. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But I know something they don't. I know Orpha's afraid now. Those threatening messages. They're not from someone in control. They're from someone who lost everything and wants me to know they blame me. That's not power, that's desperation. She's out there somewhere, probably running the same scam in a different place with different people. But now there are photos of her, fingerprints on file, 47 reasons for law enforcement to keep looking. She'll make a mistake eventually. They always do. Until then, I keep driving. Phoenix to Atlanta, Seattle to Miami, all the long stretches of American highway in between. I see the sunrise over the Rockies and the sunset over the Pacific. I drink bad coffee and eat worse food and listen to the chatter on the CB radio. Drivers warning each other about speed traps and weather, about construction zones and closed way stations. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm the only truck on a lonely stretch of highway, I think about those 47 names, the drivers who didn't make it home. They're part of the road now, part of the stories we tell, part of the reason we watch out for each other. The Bayou Rest is closed, but its memory lives on as a warning. We're not alone out here, not really. For better or worse, we're all connected. The hunters and the hunted, the lost and the found, the ones who made it out and the ones who didn't. I'm Hiram Stonefield. I'm a trucker. I survived the Bayou Rest, and I'm still driving. The temperature gauge started climbing just outside Mamou, Louisiana, on a stretch of Highway 13 that hadn't seen improvement money since the Carter administration. I'd been watching it creep up for the last 10 miles, hoping it was just the gauge acting up. But when wisps of steam started seeping from under the hood, I knew I was done hoping. My name's Akram Duskwood, and I'd been hauling refrigerated goods through Louisiana for the better part of 12 years. The truck was my life. A 2015 Volvo VNL that I'd bought used and maintained like it was made of gold. Every belt, every hose, every filter changed on schedule, which is why the overheating didn't make sense. It was just past 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in October, the kind of night where the humidity made the air feel like breathing through a wet towel, even though Halloween was just around the corner. I'd picked up a load of frozen seafood in Cameron, headed for a distribution center in Alexandria. Time-sensitive stuff. The reefer unit was humming along fine, keeping everything at -10. But if the truck died, the refrigeration would die with it. 20,000 pounds of shrimp and crawfish would start thawing, and my reputation would thaw right along with it. I eased off the accelerator, looking for somewhere to pull over. This part of Highway 13 was nothing but rice fields and swamp, with the occasional dirt road leading off to God knows where. No truck stops, no rest areas, not even a wide shoulder. Just 2 lanes of cracked asphalt cutting through the darkness. The steam was getting worse. I could smell coolant now, sweet and acrid. The temperature gauge was buried in the red. I had maybe a minute, maybe less, before something catastrophic happened. That's when I saw the turnoff. Just a gap in the trees with a rusted sign that might have once said something about a boat launch. The dirt road was rutted but solid enough. I eased the truck off the highway, drove maybe 50 yards in, and killed the engine before it could kill itself. The silence was immediate and complete. No traffic, no insects, just the tick-tick-tick of hot metal cooling and the distant hum of the reefer unit still running off the auxiliary power unit. I grabbed my flashlight and work gloves, popped the hood latch, and climbed out. The night air was thick with the smell of swamp, rotting vegetation, stagnant water, that peculiar Louisiana mixture of life and decay. Somewhere in the darkness, something splashed. Gator, probably, or maybe just a fish jumping. You learned not to think too hard about what was in the water down here. I raised the hood carefully, standing to the side in case steam geysered out. It didn't, which was actually more concerning. I played my flashlight over the engine compartment. Everything looked normal at first glance. No obvious broken hoses, no visible leaks. Then I spotted it. The main coolant hose, the big one that ran from the radiator to the engine block, had a clean slice through it. Not a tear, not a wear spot, a cut, like someone had taken a knife to it. Well, hell, I muttered. I had tape in my toolkit, maybe enough to patch it temporarily. But I'd need coolant, and lots of it, to replace what had leaked out. And even then, it would be a limp to the nearest town, hoping the patch held. I was heading back to the cab to get my tools when I heard the voice. "Got trouble, friend?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. A man was standing at the edge of my flashlight beam, like he'd materialized from the swamp itself. Tall, lean, wearing overalls and a John Deere cap. His face was weathered in that way you get from working outside your whole life. Deep lines around his eyes and mouth. "Jesus," I said, hand on my chest. "You scared me." He smiled, showing teeth that were surprisingly white in his tanned face. "Sorry about that. I'm Uriah Bleakstone. Got a place just up the road a piece. Heard your truck pull in, figured you might need help." "Ephraim Duskwood," I said, shaking his offered hand. His grip was firm, calloused. "Coolant hose is cut. Don't suppose you've got any spare hose and coolant lying around." "Matter of fact, I might," Uriah said. "Farm's got all kinds of equipment. Bound to have something that'll work. It's just a quarter mile up this road." Something about the situation felt off. How had he heard my truck from a quarter mile away? Why was he out at 2 a.m? But I was stuck, and he was offering help. "That's mighty kind of you," I said. "No trouble at all. We help each other out here. Don't get many visitors, especially not at this hour. Come on, we'll take my truck." He gestured toward the road where I could now see the shape of a pickup parked in the shadows. An old Ford, by the look of it, more rust than metal. "I should probably stay with my rig," I said. "Got refrigerated cargo." "It'll be fine for 20 minutes, Uriah said. "Not like anyone's going to steal it out here. Besides, you can't fix it without supplies." He had a point, and the APU would keep the reefer running for hours without the main engine. "All right," I said, grabbing my phone and wallet from the cab. "Lead the way." Uriah's truck smelled like motor oil and tobacco. The seat springs were shot, so I bounced with every rut in the road. He drove without headlights, navigating by memory or moonlight, I couldn't tell which. "Been farming out here long?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "All my life," he said. "My daddy's land, and his daddy's before that. Back to before the Civil War. Must be tough farming in this swamp." He chuckled. "We make do. Got rice fields, some crawfish ponds. Few head of cattle, and we do some mechanic work on the side. Folks around here can't always afford to take their equipment to town." The road curved, and suddenly there were lights ahead. Not electric lights. Too yellow, too flickering. Lanterns, maybe, or torches. A lot of them. "Having a party?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Something like that," Uriah said. "Harvest celebration, family tradition." But it was October. Rice harvest was in August, September at the latest. And who celebrated anything at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday? The farm materialized out of the darkness like something from another century. A sprawling wooden house that looked like it had been added to over generations, creating a maze of rooflines and porches, barns and sheds scattered around, most leaning at concerning angles. And people, dozens of people, all dressed like they'd stepped out of a Depression-era photograph, all standing perfectly still, all looking at the truck as we pulled up. "Family reunion," Uriah said, but his voice had changed. Flatter, less friendly. "Been planning it for months." I reached for my phone, thinking I'd text my dispatcher, let someone know where I was. No signal, not even one bar. "Cell towers don't reach out here," Uriah said, watching me. "We like it that way. Peaceful." He parked the truck, and immediately the crowd of people moved closer. Men, women, even children, all with that same weathered look, all with those same too bright smiles. "This is Ephraim," Uriah announced. "His truck broke down. We're going to help him." Murmurs of greeting, nods all around. But nobody moved to actually help. They just stood there watching. "The supplies?" I prompted. Right. Abner, get the man what he needs." A younger man, maybe 30, peeled away from the crowd. Abner Grimhold, Uriah introduced him as. He had the same lean build as Uriah, the same weathered face, but his eyes were different. Nervous, darting, like he wanted to say something but didn't dare. "Coolant hose," Uriah told him. "The good stuff." Abner nodded and jogged toward one of the barns. I noticed he kept looking back at me, that nervous expression getting worse. "While we wait," Uriah said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Come meet my wife. She's got coffee on." The hand on my shoulder wasn't a suggestion. It was a grip, firm enough to hurt if I tried to pull away. The crowd parted as he guided me toward the house, then closed behind us. I was surrounded. The house's interior was worse than the outside. It smelled of kerosene and something else, something organic and wrong. The walls were covered in old photographs, hundreds of them, all showing stern-faced people in old-fashioned clothes. But what caught my eye were the newer photos mixed in, modern photos, Polaroids mostly, showing trucks, big rigs, all different makes and models, all photographed from the same angle, like trophies. "Coffee?" A woman appeared in a doorway, thin, gray-haired, wearing a dress that might have been fashionable in 1940. Uriah's wife, presumably. He'd never said her name. "I really should get back," I said. "My cargo." "Tabitha makes the best coffee in 3 parishes," Uriah said, his grip on my shoulder tightening. It would be rude to refuse. "Tabitha Shadowmere," she introduced herself, handing me a chipped mug filled with black liquid that might have been coffee once. It was lukewarm and bitter enough to strip paint. I pretended to sip it while looking for exits. The front door we'd come through. A back door, probably to the kitchen. Windows, but all with closed shutters. "U-Haul refrigerated?" Tabitha asked, settling into a rocking chair that creaked ominously. "Yes, ma'am." "What kind of cargo?" "Seafood mostly." "Valuable?" The question was too pointed, too interested. "Not really, just shrimp and crawfish, nothing special." She exchanged a look with Uriah. Disappointment, maybe, or calculation. "Still," Uriah said, "truck like yours must be worth something." "It's insured," I said quickly. "Company tracks it by GPS. They know exactly where it is at all times." Another lie. I was an owner-operator. No company, no GPS tracker except my phone. But they didn't need to know that. Abner appeared in the doorway, breathing hard like he'd been running. "Got it," he said, holding up a length of hose. But what?" Uriah's voice had an edge now. "We're out of coolant. Used the last of it on the tractor last week." Uriah's face darkened. "Check the other shed." I did, nothing. "Then we'll have to make do," Uriah said, standing. "Come on, Ephraim, let's get you fixed up." But the atmosphere had changed. The friendly helpfulness was gone, replaced by something predatory. The people outside had moved closer to the house, blocking the windows. I could hear them murmuring, discussing something in voices too low to make out. "Actually," I said, standing up too fast, spilling some of the awful coffee. "I just remembered, I've got a buddy in Ville Platte. He runs a tire shop. He's probably up, getting ready for the morning shift. I can call him." "You said there's no cell service," Tabitha said quietly. "I'll drive to where there is. Really, you've been too kind already." "Nonsense," Uriah said. "We've got you this far. Besides, your truck's a quarter-mile away. How are you planning to get there?" Through the window, I could see more people arriving. They weren't coming from the house or the barns. They were coming from the swamp itself, emerging from the tree line in groups of 2 and 3. All dressed the same, all with that same weathered look, all heading toward the house. I was trapped, and we all knew it. "You know what?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think I'll take that hose and walk back to my truck. Don't want to trouble you folks any more than I already have." I reached for the hose in Abner's hands, but Uriah stepped between us. "Now, that don't make sense," he said. "Walking alone in the dark through swampland? That's how folks get hurt. A snake bite, gator, maybe just step wrong and break an ankle. We couldn't let that happen to a guest." Guest, the word hung in the air like a threat. Through the window, I counted at least 30 people now, all standing in a loose circle around the house. Men, women, teenagers, even a few children. All dressed like extras from a movie about the Great Depression. All perfectly still, perfectly quiet, just waiting. "Tell you what," Uriah continued. "Why don't you stay here tonight? Sun'll be up in a few hours. Everything looks better in daylight. We can sort out your truck situation then." "I appreciate the offer, but I really can't. The refrigeration unit only has so much fuel. If it runs out, I lose the whole load." "Shame to lose all that seafood," Tabitha said from her rocking chair. "Worth what, 10,000? 20? "More like 30 if it spoils," I said, inflating the number. "Company will send people looking for it if I don't check in by dawn. It's that valuable." Another lie, but I was building a story now, trying to make myself more trouble than I was worth. Abner shifted nervously by the door. "Maybe we should just let him go," he said quietly. "If people are going to come looking—" "Quiet!" Uriah snapped, and Abner flinched like he'd been hit. That's when I noticed something. Abner was younger than the others, and now that I looked closer, his clothes were different. Newer. His boots were modern work boots, not the ancient leather things the others wore. And his hands. They had the calluses of farm work, sure, but also grease under the nails. Mechanic's hands. He'd cut my coolant hose. I was suddenly sure of it. But why? And why did he look so scared now? "Tell you what," Uriah said, his false friendliness returning. "Let's go check on your truck. Make sure that refrigeration unit's still running. Wouldn't want you to lose your load while we're standing here talking." It wasn't a suggestion. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to bruise but firm enough to make it clear I didn't have a choice. The crowd outside parted as we exited the house, then closed behind us, following at a distance. Uriah's truck was blocked in now by other vehicles, old farm trucks, a few ATVs, even a tractor. We'd be walking. "Quite a gathering," I said, trying to sound casual. "Family's important out here," Uriah replied. "We stick together, help each other out. Sometimes that means making hard choices." "Like what?" He didn't answer, just kept walking. The dirt road was barely visible in the darkness, but he moved with complete confidence. Behind us, I could hear the others following, not talking, just walking. The sound of dozens of feet on dirt should have been louder, but they moved with an eerie coordination, like they'd done this before. We were halfway to my truck when Abner caught up to us, jogging past the others. "Uncle Uriah," he said, and I filed that relationship away. "Maybe we should—" I said, "Quiet," Uriah said. But Abner didn't back down this time. "This ain't right," he said. "He's not like the others." Others, the word sent ice through my veins. "What others?" I asked. "Shut up, Abner," Uriah snarled. But Abner was working himself up to something, some kind of confession or rebellion. "The ones who don't have nobody," he said, talking fast. "The ones who won't be missed, but he's got people. He's got—" Uriah's hand moved fast, backhanding Abner hard enough to send him stumbling. I said, "Shut up." I used the distraction to pull away from Uriah's grip, putting some distance between us. "What's he talking about? What others?" The crowd had stopped walking. They were spreading out now, forming a loose circle around us. In the darkness, they were just shapes, but I could feel their attention like a physical weight. "Nothing," Uriah said, but his voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. "Boys touched in the head, too much time in the sun." "The photos in your house," I said, pieces clicking together. "All those trucks, those weren't just pictures. Those were trophies." Uriah smiled then, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Man's gotta make a living. Farm don't pay what it used to. You rob truckers, that's your real harvest." "Rob's an ugly word," he said. "We prefer to think of it as reclamation. Trucks break down on this stretch all the time. Radiator hoses especially. Funny how that happens." I looked at Abner, who was holding his jaw where Uriah had hit him. "You cut my hose while I was driving. How?" "Truck stop in Mamu," Abner said quietly. "You were inside getting coffee for 15 minutes. More than enough time." I remembered the stop, just a quick break to stretch my legs and grab caffeine for the final push. I'd never even noticed anyone near my truck. "We pick careful," Uriah said. "One's driving alone. Ones with older trucks that might actually break down. Ones who look like they can't afford to lose a load, so they'll take help from strangers. And then what? You kill them?" "Kill's another ugly word," Uriah said. "Sometimes folks just disappear. Swamp's big. Lots of places a body won't ever be found. But usually, we don't have to go that far. Usually, folks are smart enough to hand over what we want and walk away. But I don't have anything. Old truck, cheap cargo. You got a truck worth 40,000 even used," Tabitha said. She'd followed us, moving silent as smoke. "You got credit cards, bank account. You got an identity we can use for all sorts of things. And if I refuse—" The circle tightened. I counted faces now, 37 people, all watching me with the patient hunger of predators who knew their prey was cornered. "Then you become a missing person report that nobody follows up on," Uriah said simply. "Another trucker who abandoned his rig walked off into the night. Happens more than you'd think." My truck was visible now, just a darker shape against the dark trees. The reefer unit was still humming, still working, my lifeline to the outside world, if I could reach it. "Here's what's going to happen," Uriah said. "You're going to sign over your truck title. You're going to give us your banking information, your passwords, everything. You're going to make this easy, and in return, we'll let you walk to the highway. Someone will pick you up eventually. You'll have a story about getting robbed, but no proof. No way to find us again. This road don't officially exist. This farm ain't on any map. And if I don't?" He pulled something from his pocket, a knife long and well used. Then we do this the hard way, and trust me, friend, you don't want that." The crowd murmured agreement. Some of them were holding tools now, shovels, picks, things that could hurt, things that could kill. But Abner was shaking his head, backing away from his uncle. "This ain't what you promised," he said. "You said we were just gonna take the trucks. Nobody was supposed to get hurt." "Nobody has to get hurt," Uriah said, not taking his eyes off me. "Long as everybody cooperates." I saw my chance then. Not in running. I'd never make it to my truck before they caught me. But in the division between Uriah and Abner, the nephew who'd been pulled into something he wasn't comfortable with. "How many?" I asked Abner directly. "How many truckers have disappeared out here?" "Don't answer that," Uriah warned. But Abner was past caring. 12, he said. 12 in the past 3 years. Most walked away, but some... He trailed off, unable to finish. "Some are still out there," I said, nodding toward the swamp. "In the water, in the mud." "Enough," Uriah said, raising the knife. "Decision time, Mr. Duskwood. Easy way or hard way?" That's when we heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the pre-dawn swamp. An engine. No, multiple engines. Getting closer. Uriah's head snapped toward the sound. "Who did you call?" "Nobody," I said, genuinely confused. "I told you, no cell service." The engines were getting louder. Definitely trucks. Big ones. Then I understood. The refrigeration unit. It had a GPS tracker built into it separate from anything on my phone. If the unit detected a problem, like running stationary for too long without the main engine, it sent an alert to the company that leased it. And that company had a contract with local recovery services. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. "The reefer unit," I said. "It's been running on auxiliary power for over an hour. That triggers an automatic alert. The leasing company sends someone to check." Uriah's face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I? Those sound like tow trucks to you? Maybe the police?" The crowd was getting agitated now, looking to Uriah for guidance. But he seemed frozen, calculating odds, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Headlights appeared through the trees. 3 sets, maybe 4. Too many for them to stop, too many witnesses. "We need to go," Tabitha said urgently. "Now." "He knows our faces," Uriah said, still holding the knife. "He knows our names." "Then we deal with it later," she said. "But not now. Not with witnesses coming." The crowd was already dispersing, melting back into the swamp with the same eerie coordination they'd shown before. Within seconds, it was just Uriah, Tabitha, Abner, and me. "This ain't over," Uriah said, backing away. "You don't know these roads like we do. You don't know these people. You'd be smart to forget this night happened." "Like the other 12 forgot?" I asked. He smiled, that cold smile again. "The smart ones did." Then they were gone, vanishing into the darkness just as the first tow truck rounded the bend. It wasn't police, just a recovery service, 2 trucks with amber lights flashing. But they'd saved my life. The driver of the lead truck was a young guy, confused about why he was out here. "Got an alert about a reefer unit in distress," he said. "You having trouble?" "Coolant hose," I said, my voice shaky. "But I've got it handled. Sorry for the false alarm." He looked at me strange. I was sweating, shaking, probably looked like hell. "You okay, man?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just been a long night." It took some convincing, but eventually they left. I used the hose Abner had given me and what little coolant I had left to patch my truck together. It wasn't pretty, but it would get me to the next town. As I was finishing up, I found something tucked under my windshield wiper. A note, hastily scrawled, "Get out of Louisiana. Don't come back. They don't forget." It wasn't signed, but I recognized the grease-stained fingerprints. Abner, trying to warn me. I drove out of there as fast as my damaged truck would go, didn't stop until I hit the truck stop in Alexandria. In the light of day, surrounded by other truckers and normal people, the whole thing felt like a nightmare. But the cut in my coolant hose was real. The note was real. The memory of 37 people emerging from the swamp was very, very real. I sat in that Alexandria truck stop for 3 hours, nursing coffee that had gone cold and trying to decide what to do. Call the police? And tell them what? That I'd been threatened by swamp people who may or may not have killed 12 truckers. I had no proof except a cut hose and a handwritten note. The farm wasn't on any map, Uriah had said. The road didn't officially exist. But I couldn't just drive away either. 12 truckers, maybe more. Some of them probably had families still wondering what happened, still waiting for them to come home. I was refilling my coffee when another trucker sat down across from me. Older guy, maybe 65, with arms covered in military tattoos and eyes that had seen everything. "You look like you've had a night," he said. "You could say that. Truck trouble? Something like that." He studied me for a moment, then leaned in closer. "Let me guess. Broke down on Highway 13 somewhere near Mamu. Had some locals offer to help." My blood went cold. "How did you know?" "Because you've got that look," he said. "Same look I had 15 years ago when it happened to me. Same look every trucker gets when they meet the Bleakstone clan. You know about them. Every old-timer who runs through Louisiana knows about them," he said. "Or knows to avoid that stretch of 13 after dark. You're lucky you got out." "There are bodies in that swamp," I said quietly. "Truckers who didn't get out." "I know," he said. "But proving it, that's something else. That family's been living in that swamp for over 150 years. They know every bog, every bayou, every place a body can disappear and never be found. And they've got connections, judges, sheriffs, people who look the other way. So nothing can be done?" He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a worn notebook from his pocket. "What's your name, son?" "Ephraim Duskwood." He wrote it down. "Truck make and model?" 2015 Volvo VNL. He added that too. "I keep a list," he explained. "Every trucker who's had a run-in with them and lived to tell about it. Everyone who didn't. Been doing it for 15 years, ever since they tried to get me. How many names? Counting you? 43 who got away. Best guess? Maybe twice that many who didn't." Jesus. "It ain't just the Bleakstones," he continued. "There are families like them all through the Deep South, living in places that time forgot, making their own laws, taking what they want. Truckers are easy targets. We're alone. We're carrying valuable cargo, and if we disappear on some back road, it can take weeks before anyone starts looking in the right place." He showed me his notebook. Pages and pages of names, dates, locations, a catalog of near misses and probable murders that nobody was investigating. "Why don't you take this to the FBI?" I asked. "I did, 3 times. They said without bodies, without proof, it's just speculation. And the one time they did send agents down to that swamp, the Bleakstones were ready. Everything cleaned up, everyone with alibis, the whole family playing dumb country folk who wouldn't hurt a fly. So they just keep doing it. They get bolder every year," he said. "Used to be they'd only hit maybe 1 or 2 trucks a year. Now, from what I'm hearing, they're taking 1 a month during the busy season." I thought about Abner, the nephew who'd seemed reluctant, scared even. "Not all of them are willing participants," I said. "The younger one, Abner, he tried to warn me." The old trucker nodded. "There's always 1 or 2 who don't have the stomach for it," But family loyalty runs deep in places like that. Even the reluctant ones won't turn on their blood. He might, I said, thinking about the fear in Abner's eyes, the way he'd flinched when Uriah hit him. He's already halfway to breaking. Maybe. But getting to him would mean going back there, and that's not something I'd recommend. I knew he was right. The smart thing would be to repair my truck properly, deliver my load, and never take a route through Louisiana again. But I couldn't shake the image of those photos on Uriah's wall. All those trucks. All those drivers who'd just wanted to make their delivery and go home. "What's your name?" I asked the old trucker. "Frank Morrison," he said. "I run the northern routes mostly now, stay out of Louisiana altogether. But you kept the notebook." "Someone has to remember," he said. "Someone has to keep count." We sat there for a while, two truckers in a busy stop, surrounded by the normal chaos of people coming and going. But we were both thinking about that swamp, about the things that happened in the dark places where the modern world hadn't quite reached. "I need to make my delivery," I finally said. "But after that, you do what you need to do," Frank said. "Just remember, they've been doing this for generations. They're not going to stop because one trucker got away." I made my delivery in Alexandria, got my truck properly repaired, and should have headed north, back to safer roads. Instead, I found myself researching. The Bleakstone name appeared in old records, property deeds, census data, court documents going back to the 1850s. Always in the same area, always keeping to themselves. There were newspaper articles too, mostly from decades past. Mysterious disappearances, unexplained accidents, bodies found in the swamp that were too decomposed to identify. And there was a pattern. Every few years, someone would try to investigate. A sheriff in the 1970s who'd started asking questions and then suddenly retired. A journalist in the 90s whose car was found burned on a back road, the driver never located. A state police detective in 2008 who'd opened a case file on missing truckers and then transferred to another parish without explanation. The Bleakstones had survived by being careful, by never taking too much too fast, by making sure their victims were people who wouldn't be immediately missed. But they'd made a mistake with me. I had connections, resources, and I had Frank's notebook, which gave me something they didn't expect. A pattern, a history, names and dates that could be verified. I spent a week putting it together, cross-referencing Frank's list with missing person reports, checking trucking company records, even reaching out to families of missing drivers. The picture that emerged was damning. Trucks that had supposedly broken down on Highway 13 and were never recovered. Drivers who'd last been seen at truck stops in Mamou or Ville Platte. Credit cards that had been used after the drivers disappeared, always for cash advances, always in small towns near the Bleakstone property. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed proof, and there was only one way to get it. I called Frank. "I'm going back." "That's suicide, son." "Maybe, but I've got a plan." "What kind of plan?" "The kind that requires backup. How many of those 43 truckers who got away would be willing to help?" He was quiet for a moment. "To do what exactly? To end this, once and for all?" "That's vigilante talk." "No," I said, "that's justice talk. We're not going to hurt anyone, but we're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." It took 3 days of phone calls, but in the end I had 7 truckers willing to help. All of them had encountered the Bleakstones and survived. All of them had lost friends or heard of someone who disappeared on that stretch of road. We met at a truck stop in Lafayette to plan. There was Frank, of course. Then Miguel Reeves, whose brother had vanished on Highway 13 5 years ago. Tom Washington, who'd escaped the Bleakstones by ramming through their roadblock and destroying his truck in the process. Janet Pike, one of the few female truckers who'd encountered them. They'd underestimated her because of her gender, giving her the chance to escape. Brothers Pete and Paul Kowalski, who'd been team driving when the Bleakstones tried to take them. And, finally, young Marcus Chen, whose father had disappeared on that road when Marcus was just a kid. "Here's what we know," I said, spreading out maps and photos on the table. The Bleakstones own about 300 acres of swampland. One main access road, but probably dozens of trails and paths only they know about. The main compound is here. I pointed to a satellite photo I'd managed to find, about a quarter mile from Highway 13. "How many of them?" Tom asked. "At least 40, based on what I saw. Men, women, teenagers, all family, all loyal to Uriah. Except maybe Abner," I added. "He's the weak link. Young, scared, doesn't want to be part of it." "So what's the plan?" Janet asked. "We don't go in guns blazing," I said. "That's what they'd expect, and they know that swamp better than we ever will. Instead, we make them come to us." I explained my idea. It was risky, required precise timing, and depended on the Bleakstones being predictable. But if it worked, we'd have evidence that couldn't be ignored. "You're using yourself as bait," Frank said when I finished. "Someone has to, and I'm the one they want most right now. I got away, and I know too much." "This is crazy," Paul Kowalski said. "Maybe," I admitted. "But doing nothing is worse. How many more truckers are going to disappear while we sit here debating?" We spent the rest of the day preparing. Cameras to document everything. CB radios for communication. And most importantly, contacting people on the outside. Journalists, state police from other parishes, even a contact Tom had in the FBI. We gave them all the same message. On October 30th, something was going to happen on Highway 13 near Mamou. Be ready. The night of October 29th, I drove my truck back down Highway 13. Same route, same time of night, even carrying another load of seafood. I wanted everything to be familiar, to make the Bleakstones think I was just another stupid trucker who hadn't learned his lesson. Sure enough, just outside Mamou, my coolant hose failed again. Cut in the exact same place. Abner hadn't lost his touch. I pulled over at the same turnoff, went through the same routine of checking the engine. And just like before, Uriah appeared out of the darkness. "Well, well," he said. "Ephraim Duskwood. Didn't think we'd see you again." "Had to make the delivery," I said, trying to sound nervous. "This is the fastest route." "Foolish," he said, "very foolish." This time, he wasn't alone. At least a dozen men emerged from the trees, all armed. They'd learned from last time. "No recovery service coming to save you tonight," Uriah said. "We disabled that GPS unit while you were driving. You're all alone out here." "I figured as much," I said. He smiled that cold smile. "Then you know how this ends." "I do," I said. "But not the way you think." That's when the lights came on. 7 trucks, hidden in the trees on both sides of the road, all hit their high beams at once. The Bleakstones were suddenly illuminated like actors on a stage, and every one of those trucks had dashboard cameras running, recording everything. "What the hell?" Uriah spun around, shielding his eyes from the lights. "You're being recorded," I announced loudly, making sure the cameras would pick up my voice. "Everything you say, everything you do, is being documented." Frank's voice boomed from his truck's PA system. "This is being live-streamed to multiple platforms. State police are already on their way." That was partly true. We were recording everything. But the live stream was a bluff, no signal out here. But the Bleakstones didn't know that. "You think you're clever," Uriah snarled, pulling out his knife. "But cameras can be destroyed. Witnesses can disappear." 7 witnesses, I said, all of whom told people exactly where they'd be tonight. All of whom have families expecting them to check in. More Bleakstones were emerging from the swamp now, drawn by the commotion. I saw Tabitha among them, and there, hanging back near the trees, was Abner. His face was pale in the truck lights, eyes wide with what looked like relief mixed with terror. "Abner," I called out, "this is your chance. You don't have to be part of this anymore. Shut your mouth," Uriah roared. But I saw Abner take a step forward, then stop, caught between loyalty and conscience. 12 truckers, Abner," I continued. "Maybe more. You know where they are. You can end this." "Don't listen to him, boy," Tabitha shrieked. "He's outsider. Family comes first." But something in Abner had finally broken. Maybe it was the lights, the cameras, the knowledge that the outside world was finally watching. Or maybe he'd just been waiting for someone to give him permission to do what he'd wanted to do all along. "They're in the old quarry," he said, his voice barely audible. Then louder, "The bodies. They're in the Mirepoix quarry, about 2 miles northeast of the farm, weighted down with engine blocks." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the swamp seemed to hold its breath. Then Uriah moved, faster than a man his age should be able to. Not toward Abner. Toward me. The knife flashed in the lights as he covered the distance between us in seconds. I tried to dodge, but he was on me, the blade slicing across my ribs as I twisted away. Hot pain flared, and I felt blood immediately soaking my shirt. We went down together, rolling in the dirt, him trying to drive the knife home while I fought to control his wrist. "Stop recording," Tabitha screamed. "All of you, stop recording or we'll kill him." But the truckers didn't stop. They couldn't. This was evidence, proof of what the Bleakstones really were. Uriah was stronger than he looked. Muscles like wire cables under his weathered skin. The knife inched closer to my throat. I could smell his breath, sour with tobacco and something rotten. Then a shovel connected with the side of his head. Not hard enough to kill, but enough to stun. Uriah rolled away and I looked up to see Abner standing over us, shovel raised for another swing if necessary. "Enough," Abner said. "It's enough, Uncle Uriah. It's over." "You little traitor." Tabitha rushed forward, but Janet Pike was out of her truck now, tire iron in hand, placing herself between Tabitha and Abner. "Back off, lady," Janet said calmly. "You're done terrorizing truckers." The sound of sirens finally cut through the night. Real ones, this time, getting closer fast. The Bleakstones began to scatter, some running for the swamp, others for vehicles. But it was too late. The road was blocked in both directions now. Police cars, state troopers, even an FBI van. Uriah struggled to his feet, blood running from where Abner had hit him. He looked at his nephew with pure hatred. "You destroyed us. Your own blood." "You destroyed us," Abner shot back. "The moment you killed the first trucker, I was just too scared to stop you." The police moved in then, weapons drawn, shouting orders. The Bleakstones who hadn't fled were forced to the ground, cuffed, arrested. Uriah and Tabitha were among them, still cursing Abner, threatening him even as they were read their rights. An EMT worked on my ribs. The cut was long but not deep, needing stitches but nothing critical. As he bandaged me up, I watched the police operation unfold. They'd brought everyone, local cops, state police, FBI, even a forensic team ready to process the scene. Detective Sarah Robichaux from the state police took my statement right there on the roadside. I told her everything, both encounters, the 43 truckers Frank had documented, what Abner had said about the quarry. She listened, asked careful questions, took notes. "We've been trying to crack this family for years," she admitted. But they were careful, connected. We needed something like this. Multiple witnesses, video evidence. One of them turning witness. "What happens to Abner?" I asked. "Depends on what he knows, what he's willing to testify to. He's young, seems like he was coerced. Prosecutor might offer him a deal if he cooperates fully." Frank came over as the detective moved on to interview others. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected. "All of us." By dawn, the Mirepoix quarry had been located. It took 3 days to drain enough water to start recovering bodies. The final count was worse than anyone had imagined. 19 truckers over a 15-year period. Some had been reported missing, others had simply vanished without anyone to report them gone. Each body told a story of violence, of lives cut short for the contents of a wallet or the value of a truck. The trial was a sensation. 41 members of the Bleakstone family were eventually arrested, though only 23 were charged with serious crimes. Uriah and Tabitha got life without parole. Others got sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years depending on their level of involvement. Abner testified for the prosecution. He laid out the entire operation, how they chose victims, how they disposed of bodies, how they sold the trucks through a network of chop shops across 3 states. His testimony was devastating, and when it was over, he entered witness protection. Last I heard, he was somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, working as a mechanic under a new name, trying to build a life free from the shadow of his family's crimes. The trucking community responded in force. A memorial was erected on Highway 13, near where so many had disappeared. 19 names carved in granite, with space left for any others who might be found. Truckers stop there sometimes, leave flowers or small tokens. It's become a place of pilgrimage, a reminder of what can happen when we don't watch out for each other. I kept driving for another 2 years, but it was never the same. Every breakdown, every offer of help from a stranger, every isolated road at night, they all carried echoes of that swamp, of Uriah's cold smile and the knife flashing in the headlights. The scar on my ribs ached whenever it rained, a permanent reminder. Eventually, I sold my truck and took a job as a dispatcher. It's safer, more predictable. I sleep in my own bed every night instead of in truck stops, but I miss the road sometimes, miss the freedom of it, the solidarity of the trucking community. Frank Morrison still drives, still keeps his notebook, though he hasn't had to add many names lately. The story of the Bleakstones spread through the trucking world like wildfire. Every driver knows now to be careful on isolated roads, to verify offers of help, to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. The Bleakstone property was seized by the state, the farm and buildings demolished. The land is returning to swamp now, nature reclaiming what was always hers. Sometimes people report seeing lights there at night, hearing voices calling for help. But that's just folklore, stories truckers tell. The real Bleakstones are in prison, where they'll stay for the rest of their lives. 5 years have passed since that night on Highway 13. I'm sitting in my office at Shepherd Logistics in Shreveport, going through driver logs and route assignments. It's routine work, far from the danger and uncertainty of long-haul trucking. But every October, when the heat breaks and the Louisiana nights turn cool, I think about that encounter. The phone rings. It's my direct line, not the company number. Ephraim Duskwood? The voice is young, nervous. Yes? My name is, well, that doesn't matter. I heard about what happened with the Bleakstones, all of it. That was 5 years ago, I say carefully. Old news. Not for everyone. See, my family, we have a similar situation. Not Louisiana, Mississippi, about 60 miles east of Jackson. Family that's been preying on truckers for decades. I feel the old chill, the one I thought I'd left behind when I quit driving. Why are you calling me? Because you stopped them. You and those other truckers, you showed it could be done. Call the police. I can't. They own the police in our county. Sheriff's married to my cousin. Deputies are all related somehow. It's like the Bleakstones, but worse, because they're not just taking truckers. They're taking anyone who breaks down on Highway 49. Families, tourists, anyone. I'm already reaching for my old notebook, the one where I kept track of everything during the Bleakstone investigation. What's your name? Call me Daniel. That's not my real name, but it's what I want to be called. Are you part of it, Daniel? Like Abner was? A long pause. I was, until 3 weeks ago when they took a family. Mom, Dad, 2 kids. The kids were maybe 8 and 10. They made me help dispose of the car. The kids' toys were still in the back seat. I close my eyes. It's happening again. Or maybe it never stopped. Maybe for every Bleakstone clan we expose, there are 10 more operating in the shadows of America's back roads. Where are you now? I ask. Truck stop near Meridian. I ran. Took what evidence I could, but it's not much. Some photos, a few documents. They'll come looking for me soon. How many bodies, Daniel? Dozens, maybe over 100. They've been doing this since the 1960s. I look at the photo on my desk. The 7 truckers who helped me stop the Bleakstones. Frank, Miguel, Tom, Janet, Pete, Paul, Marcus. We still keep in touch, still share information about dangerous routes and suspicious incidents. Stay where you are, I tell Daniel. Keep visible, stay in public spaces. I'm going to make some calls. I hang up and immediately dial Frank. He answers on the second ring like he's been expecting my call. Frank, we've got another situation. Mississippi? How did you know? Been hearing rumors for months. Truckers going missing on 49. Locals all say to avoid that stretch after dark. Figured it was only a matter of time before someone reached out. Can you get the others? Already started. Tom's in Memphis, can be there in 3 hours. Janet's running a load through Mobile, but she can divert. The Kowalski brothers are actually in Mississippi right now doing a furniture haul. What about Marcus? Marcus quit driving last year. Got married, has a baby on the way. But he gave me names of other drivers who want to help. There's a whole network now, Ephraim. Truckers who've heard the story, who want to be part of stopping these predators. This is what we've become. Not vigilantes exactly, but a kind of early warning system. A rapid response network for situations the regular law enforcement can't or won't handle. Since the Bleakstones, we've helped expose 3 other operations. Each time, we use the same strategy. Overwhelming documentation, multiple witnesses, and enough media attention that authorities have to act. I'll need a truck, I say. You're coming out of retirement. Just for this. That kid sounds scared, Frank. And if there are really 100 bodies, I know someone with a rig you can borrow. Owner-operator who's laid up with a bad back. He'd be happy to help the cause. Within 6 hours, I'm back behind the wheel of a semi for the first time in 3 years. It's a newer Peterbilt, all digital displays and computer-controlled everything. Different from what I used to drive, but the feel is the same. The height, the power, the sense of being part of something bigger than just a vehicle. I meet Daniel at the truck stop. He's younger than Abner was, maybe 22, with the haunted look of someone who's seen too much. His evidence is more substantial than he indicated on the phone. Photographs of burial sites, ledgers showing trucks that were sold, even audio recordings of family members discussing their crimes. They call themselves the Harrow family, he explains, as we sit in my borrowed truck, going through the materials. Been living on the same land since before the Civil War. They have a whole system, fake cops who pull people over, a tow service that's actually a front for their operation, even a used car dealership where they sell the vehicles. How many family members are involved? At least 60 who know about it, maybe half that who actively participate. My grandfather, Josiah Harrow, he runs it all, makes the Bleakstones look like amateurs. Over the next 2 days, we build our case. The network Frank mentioned is bigger than I imagined. 30 truckers willing to help, plus journalists who covered the Bleakstone story, even some FBI agents who worked that case and want to prevent another one. The plan is similar but larger in scale. We need to catch the Harrows in the act, document everything, and make it impossible for local law enforcement to cover it up. But this time, we have an advantage. Daniel knows their procedures, their schedules, when and where they hunt. Tuesday nights, he says. They always work Tuesday nights. Fewer trucks on the road, fewer witnesses. They have a spot on Highway 49, about 10 miles south of McGee. Blind curve, no cell service. They put out spike strips, wait for someone to blow their tires, then the fake cops show up. And people fall for it? The uniforms are perfect. The cars look real, unless you know what to look for. By the time victims realize something's wrong, it's too late. We set it up for the following Tuesday. I'd be the bait, driving the Peterbilt with a load of electronics, valuable enough to be worth their attention. The other truckers would be positioned along the route, hidden but ready. We had drone operators, yes, truckers with drones now, ready to provide aerial footage. And this time we had real law enforcement standing by. FBI agents from the Jackson field office, who Daniel had contacted independently. The night came fast. October 29th, almost exactly 5 years after my first encounter with the Bleakstones. I tried not to think about the coincidence as I drove south on Highway 49, watching my mirrors for any sign of trouble. The spike strip appeared exactly where Daniel said it would be, barely visible in the darkness. I managed to avoid it, pretending to swerve for an animal. As expected, this triggered their backup plan. A police car, complete with lights and sirens, appeared behind me, signaling me to pull over. I complied, pulling onto the shoulder. The officer who approached looked the part, uniform pressed, badge shining, hand resting on his weapon, but I could see others moving in the woods surrounding my truck. "License and registration," the fake cop said. I handed over forgeries Frank had prepared. Documents that would check out initially but raise flags if anyone looked too closely. The cop studied them with a flashlight, then smiled. "Mr. Johnson, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." "What's the problem, officer?" "Step out of the vehicle, sir." I complied and immediately felt a gun pressed against my back. Not from the fake cop, from someone who'd approached from the blind side. "Don't make a sound," a voice whispered. "Just walk toward the trees." This was the moment. I raised my hands, the signal we'd agreed on. The night exploded with light and sound. 30 trucks hit their horns simultaneously while activating every light they had. Headlights, fog lights, work lights. The hidden drones buzzed overhead, their cameras capturing everything. And from the north and south, real police cars with real sirens came screaming down the highway. The Harrows scattered like roaches, but there was nowhere to go. The truckers had formed a perimeter, their vehicles blocking every escape route. The drones tracked those who ran into the woods. and the FBI agents who'd been monitoring everything moved in with practiced precision. The fake cop tried to run, but didn't get 10 feet before Tom Washington tackled him. The one with the gun at my back dropped it and raised his hands, smart enough to know when he was beaten. But the real chaos was at the Harrow compound, 3 miles away. A separate FBI team, working off Daniel's intelligence, raided it simultaneously. They found weapons, uniforms, fake badges, and detailed records going back 60 years. They also found Josiah Harrow trying to burn documents in a barrel behind the main house. Documents that included names, dates, and locations of over 140 murders. The aftermath was even bigger than the Bleakstone case. The Harrow family had connections throughout Mississippi law enforcement, and the investigation led to the arrest of 3 sheriffs, 8 deputies, and 2 judges. The body count, when they finally finished searching all the burial sites Daniel had identified, reached 153. It was one of the largest serial killing operations in American history. Daniel didn't enter witness protection. Instead, he became an advocate, working with families of missing persons to identify victims. Many of the bodies recovered had been listed as missing for decades. Finally, families had closure. The trucking network we'd formed evolved into something more official, the Highway Guardian Initiative. Funded partly by trucking companies and partly by donations, it maintains a database of dangerous areas, suspicious incidents, and missing drivers. It also provides rapid response when a driver reports trouble, coordinating with legitimate law enforcement and media to ensure transparency. I went back to my dispatcher job, but I remain involved with the initiative. We get calls every month, sometimes false alarms, sometimes real threats. We've exposed 7 more operations in the 5 years since the Harrows, though none as large or established. But here's the thing that haunts me. For every one we stop, how many are still out there? How many families like the Bleakstones and Harrows are still preying on travelers on America's back roads? How many bodies are hidden in swamps and quarries and forgotten places, never to be found? I keep a map in my office now, marked with red pins for every confirmed predator site, yellow for suspicious areas, green for places we've cleared. There's still too much red, too much yellow, too many dark places where the modern world hasn't quite reached, where old families make their own law and strangers disappear without a trace. Sometimes young truckers come to see me, wanting to hear the story firsthand. I tell them, but I also warn them. The road is dangerous in ways that have nothing to do with weather or mechanical failure. There are human predators out there, watching for the vulnerable, the isolated, the ones who won't be immediately missed. Trust your instincts, I tell them. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't be too proud to refuse help, to turn around, to call for backup. And always, always let someone know where you are. Last month, I got a letter. No return address, postmarked from Oregon. Inside was a photo of a young man standing next to a well-maintained car at what looked like a legitimate auto shop. On the back, written in careful handwriting, "Living clean, teaching others to do the same. Thank you for giving me the courage. A.G. Abner Grimhold, building a new life far from the Louisiana swamps. He'd found his own way to make amends, to balance the scales. It gave me hope. But then yesterday, another call came. Wyoming this time. A family that's been hunting truckers near the Colorado border. The caller sounds young, scared, familiar. Another reluctant accomplice looking for a way out. Another dark operation waiting to be exposed. Frank's already making calls. The network is mobilizing. Someone's borrowing me a truck. Because this is what we do now. We watch the dark roads. We protect our own. We shine lights into the shadows where predators hide. It's dangerous work, thankless most of the time, but necessary. The Bleakstones are in prison. The Harrows are in prison. But there are always more. Always another family, another stretch of dangerous road, another trap waiting to be sprung. And as long as they're out there, we'll be out there too. Truckers looking out for truckers, refusing to let each other disappear into the darkness. My name is Ephraim Duskwood. I survived the Bleakstones. I helped stop the Harrows. And I'm not done yet. The road calls and I answer. Because someone has to. Because truckers don't leave truckers behind. Because in the end, we're all just trying to make it home safe. And sometimes that means fighting the monsters that wait in the darkness. The borrowed truck is ready. Wyoming is a long haul from here, but I've driven longer. Time to get back on the road. Time to hunt the hunters once again. But before I could leave for Wyoming, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't someone asking for help. It was someone offering information I never expected to hear. Mr. Duskwood, this is Special Agent Patricia Morse with the FBI. We've been monitoring your activities with the Highway Guardian Initiative. My blood ran cold. Were we in trouble? Had we crossed some legal line? Relax, she said, apparently reading my silence correctly. You're not under investigation. Actually, we want to share some information with you. Can you come to our field office in Shreveport? 2 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room looking at files that made my skin crawl. Agent Morse, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and graying hair, spread photographs across the table. These are from the Bleakstone property, she said. Areas we didn't publicize during the trial. The photos showed something I hadn't expected. Old structures. Much older than the farmhouse. Stone foundations. Collapsed cellars. Things that looked almost colonial in design. The Bleakstone property goes back to the 1700s, Morse explained. French colonial, then Spanish, then American. But the family's been there through all of it. Different names, same blood. What are you saying? I'm saying this is bigger and older than you realized. The Bleakstones weren't just some backwoods family that turned bad. They're part of something that's been happening for centuries, and they're not the only ones. She pulled out a map of the United States, marked with red dots. Hundreds of them, clustered along old trade routes, pioneer trails, places where travelers had always passed through. Every one of these is a family or group we've identified as potentially involved in systematic predation of travelers. Some are active, some dormant, some we're not sure about. But the pattern is clear. Old families, isolated locations, and a long history of disappearances. How long have you known about this? The FBI has been tracking this pattern since the 1970s, but the roots go back much further. There are newspaper accounts from the 1800s, stories from frontier times. Hell, there are Native American oral histories warning about certain families, certain places where travelers shouldn't stop. I stared at the map, feeling overwhelmed. So, what do you want from me? The Highway Guardian Initiative has done something we couldn't. You've created a trusted network within the trucking community. Drivers talk to you in ways they won't talk to us. We want to formalize a relationship, share information, coordinate responses. You want us to be informants. I want you to be partners, she corrected. Look, the Harrow case you just broke? We'd been trying to crack that for 20 years. You did it in a week because you had inside information and community trust. That's invaluable. She showed me more files. The Brennan family in Montana, suspected of killing travelers since the 1890s. The Delacroix clan in the Louisiana bayous, different from the Bleakstones but just as deadly. The Ashford group in the mountains of West Virginia where hikers and truckers had been vanishing for decades. Some of these families are connected, Morse continued. They share information, techniques, even victims sometimes. There's evidence of a loose network, almost like an underground railroad, but for predators. That's insane. Is it? You've seen 2 of these operations firsthand. You know how organized they are, how they've survived for generations. Is it so hard to believe they communicate with each other? She had a point. The Bleakstones and Harrows had both mentioned knowing about other families, other operations. What about Daniel's family, the Harrows? Have they talked? Some of them, the younger ones mostly, trying to get reduced sentences. They've confirmed what we suspected. There are gathering places, meetings where these families share techniques and divide territory. They call them harvests. Like Uriah said, I whispered, remembering his words about harvest celebrations. Exactly. These aren't just isolated criminal families. This is a subculture, hidden in plain sight, preying on travelers for generations. Agent Morse leaned forward. Mr. Duskwood, the Wyoming situation you're heading to, we have intelligence on that family. The Thornwaites. They're connected to at least 3 other families, including remnants of the Bleakstone clan who escaped arrest. Or for Thornwick's people. No, different branch. But yes, some of them fled Louisiana after your operation. They're regrouping, forming new alliances, and they remember you. She showed me another photo, a grainy security camera image from a truck stop in Colorado. A woman in the background, partially hidden but familiar. It could have been Tabitha Shadowmere, though she was supposedly in prison. That's from last week, Morse said. We think several family members are using fake identities, possibly planning something. You've become a symbol to them, the outsider who broke their system. Some want revenge. Others want to make an example of you to discourage other truckers from fighting back. So I'm a target. You've been a target since the night you escaped the Bleakstones, but now it's organized. They're watching you, waiting for you to be vulnerable. I thought about all the solo drives I'd done, all the truck stops I'd visited, all the times I'd felt watched, but dismissed it as paranoia. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because we need you to keep doing what you're doing, but smarter, with backup, with intelligence. The Wyoming situation is a trap, Mr. Duskwood. The family there, the Thornwaites, they're expecting you. The young man who called you? We're not sure he's legitimate. You think he's bait? We think it's possible. These families have children, grandchildren, young people who can play the role of the reluctant accomplice, the one seeking help. It's a technique they've used before. My mind raced back to Abner, to Daniel. Had they been genuine? Or was I just lucky those times? Here's what we propose, Morse said. Go to Wyoming, but with full FBI backup. Wired, tracked, and with agents ready to move. If it's legitimate, we help another victim escape and shut down another operation. If it's a trap, we catch them in the act. And if they just kill me before your agents can move, that's a risk, she admitted. But the alternative is letting them continue. And frankly, Mr. Duskwood, they're going to come for you eventually anyway. Better to face them on our terms. She was right. I'd made myself a target the moment I stood up to the Bleakstones. Running wouldn't change that. There's something else, Morse added, pulling out one final file. We've been investigating the quarries where bodies were found. The Mirepoix quarry where the Bleakstone victims were discovered. It's not just a dump site. We found evidence of ritualistic placement. Symbols carved in stones, bodies arranged in patterns. These families, some of them have beliefs, traditions that go beyond just criminal enterprise. What kind of beliefs? Old ones, pre-Christian in some cases. They see themselves as guardians of ancient ways, and travelers as offerings, sacrifices to ensure their prosperity. It sounds crazy, but several captured family members have described similar beliefs. I remembered the photos on the bleak stone walls, the way they'd all moved in unison, the ceremony-like atmosphere of that night gathering. So, we're not just fighting criminals, I said. We're fighting true believers. That's what makes them so dangerous, and so hard to stop. They genuinely believe they're doing something necessary, even righteous. I left the FBI office with my head spinning. The Wyoming trip was still on, but now it would be a joint operation. I'd wear a wire, have GPS trackers, and FBI agents would shadow me the entire way. The network of trucker volunteers would still help, but as an outer perimeter, not knowing the full scope of federal involvement. Frank was skeptical when I called him. "You're trusting the feds now?" he asked. "I'm trusting that they want these families stopped as much as we do," I replied, "and they have resources we don't. Just be careful, Ephraim. Once you're in bed with the FBI, you don't get to choose which way the relationship goes." 3 days later, I was on the road to Wyoming. The borrowed Peterbilt handled beautifully, and I tried to enjoy what might be my last long haul. The wire itched under my shirt. The GPS tracker in my boot felt heavy. Knowing that federal agents were somewhere nearby and unmarked cars didn't make me feel safer. It made me feel like bait. Which, of course, I was. The meeting point was a rest area near Laramie, one of those desolate stops. That's just a parking lot and some picnic tables. The kind of place where anything could happen and no one would know for hours. The young man, calling himself Daniel, different Daniel than the Harrow whistleblower, was waiting as promised. Early 20s, nervous energy, constantly checking over his shoulder. He looked the part perfectly. Too perfectly. "Mr. Duskwood," he said, as I climbed down from the cab. "Thank you for coming. I didn't think anyone would believe me." "Tell me about your family," I said, staying near my truck, keeping my options open. He launched into a story. The Thornwaite family, 3 generations of predators, bodies buried in mine shafts. It was convincing, detailed, emotional. But something was off. His accent kept slipping, sometimes Wyoming, sometimes somewhere else. Southern, maybe. "You said on the phone you had evidence," I prompted. "Yes, in my car. I'll show you." He started walking toward a beaten sedan parked at the edge of the lot. Every instinct screamed danger. This was it, the moment where I'd either expose another predator family or walk into a trap. I followed, but slowly, noting everything. The rest area was empty except for us. No other trucks, no tourists, but I knew the FBI was watching. They had to be. Daniel opened his trunk, and I saw what was inside. Not evidence, but rope. Zip ties, a taser. He turned toward me, and his nervous expression was gone, replaced by cold determination. "They said you were smart," he said, his accent now fully Southern. Louisiana Southern, but not smart enough. The taser was in his hand, rising toward me. I started to dodge, but more figures emerged from behind the other cars. 4 of them, all young, all moving with purpose. This was the trap. But as they closed in, all hell broke loose. FBI agents materialized from concealed positions. Behind trees, from a van I hadn't even noticed, from prone positions on the rest area roof. "Federal agents, nobody move!" The young man who'd called himself Daniel tried to run, but didn't get 3 steps before being tackled. The others surrendered immediately, dropping to their knees with practiced ease. They knew the drill. Agent Morse approached, weapon drawn but pointed down. "You okay, Duskwood?" "Yeah," I said, though my heart was racing. They were really going to do it, They were going to take me. Not just take you, she said, nodding to the sedan's trunk. Look closer. Among the restraints were photos of me, of Frank, of Tom, Janet, all the truckers who'd helped expose the Bleakstones and Harrows. We weren't just targets. We were a list. They were planning to get all of you one by one, Morse explained. Start with you as the symbol, then work through the rest. Send a message that interfering with their operations has consequences. The fake Daniel, whose real name turned out to be Josiah Bleakstone IV, Uriah's grandson, was defiant during questioning. You think you've won? He said, looking directly at me through the interrogation room window. You have no idea how many of us there are, how deep this goes. My grandfather's in prison, but the family endures. We've endured for centuries. We'll outlast you, outlast the FBI, outlast everything. Maybe, I said, but not today. The Wyoming operation revealed more than we expected. The 5 arrested were all children or grandchildren of imprisoned family members, a next generation trying to restart operations. They had lists, plans, resources hidden away. But they also had something else, communication with dozens of other families across the country. Phones, computers, and documents seized during the arrests revealed a shadow network more extensive than even the FBI had suspected. Families that had been preying on travelers weren't just isolated groups. They were a loose confederation, sharing information through encrypted channels, coded messages in trucker forums, even meetings disguised as family reunions or heritage festivals. The names were chilling in their ordinariness. The Carters in Tennessee, the Millers in Arkansas, the Johnsons in Oklahoma. Normal names hiding abnormal activities. Each family had its territory, its methods, its own history of making travelers disappear. But the arrests also triggered something unexpected: panic among these families. Within days of the Wyoming operation, the FBI reported unusual activity. Properties being abandoned, families disappearing overnight, evidence being destroyed. The network was going dark, scattering. We spooked them, Agent Morse told me during a debriefing. They're running, going to ground. Could take years to track them all down now. Or they're regrouping, I suggested. Planning something bigger. She didn't disagree. I returned to Shreveport to my dispatcher job, to what should have been normal life. But normal was gone forever. I knew too much, had seen too much. Every missing trucker report that crossed my desk could be another family operation. Every breakdown on a lonely road could be another trap. The Highway Guardian initiative grew exponentially after the Wyoming incident. Thousands of truckers joined, creating the largest informal safety network in American transportation history. We developed apps, protocols, check-in systems. If a trucker went silent for too long, others would come looking. But the families adapted too. They became more careful, more selective. Instead of targeting truckers, they moved to other travelers, RV tourists, migrant workers, people even less likely to be missed. The old ways continued, just with new victims. Then, 6 months after Wyoming, I got another call. This one was different. Mr. Duskwood. The voice was old, cultured, with a trace of Southern accent. My name is Cornelius Ashford. You may have heard of my family. The Ashfords of West Virginia, one of the oldest, most dangerous families the FBI had identified. I'm listening, I said, already reaching for my phone to record. I'm 93 years old, he continued. I've seen and done things that would turn your hair white, but I'm dying now. Cancer. Weeks left, maybe days, and I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? Full confession. Every family I know about, every technique, every burial site. A century of secrets. In exchange, you come alone, hear my story, and ensure my younger relatives who weren't involved are protected. Why me? Because you're the one who started this. The one who showed it was possible to fight back. I respect that, even as I hate you for it. You destroyed a way of life that's existed since before America was a country. But maybe it was time. Agent Morse was against it, said it was certainly a trap. Frank said the same. Everyone said the same. But something in the old man's voice seemed genuine, tired, ready to end things. So I went, not completely alone. I wore enough surveillance equipment to outfit a spy. But I went to the address he gave, an old mansion in the West Virginia mountains that looked like something from a Gothic novel. Cornelius Ashford was indeed dying. I could see it in his hollow cheeks, his labored breathing, the IV drip beside his bed. But his eyes were sharp, alert, holding centuries of secrets. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair beside his bed. "Let me tell you how it really began." For the next 6 hours he talked. He told me about his grandfather's grandfather, who'd started by robbing travelers on the National Road in the 1830s, about how it became a family tradition, justified by twisted logic and old beliefs, about the first meetings between families, the agreements to divide territory, the rules they followed. "We saw ourselves as colors," he said, removing the weak, the foolish, those who wouldn't be missed. We told ourselves we were performing a service, keeping the roads dangerous enough that people stayed vigilant. That's insane. Of course it is. But when you're raised in it, taught it from birth, it becomes normal. My first kill was when I was 16, a traveling salesman in 1946. My father stood behind me, guiding my hand on the knife. Said I was becoming a man. He named names, drew maps, revealed burial sites across a dozen states. He explained the symbols they used, the ways they communicated, the corrupt officials who'd protected them. It was a complete unveiling of a hidden world. "Why?" I asked finally. "Why reveal all this?" "Because it's over," he said. "You ended it that night with the Bleakstones. Oh, families will continue for a while, but the real tradition, the old ways, they're dead. The modern world has too many cameras, too much connectivity. A person can't just disappear anymore without questions. People still disappear. Not like they used to. In my grandfather's time, dozens could vanish from one stretch of road in a year, and no one would connect the dots. Now, every missing person is in a database. Every abandoned vehicle is investigated. Every family member has a Facebook page asking for information." He coughed, specks of blood hitting his handkerchief. "I'm the last of the old generation," he continued. "The ones who come after, like those fools in Wyoming, they're playing at being predators. They don't understand the patience it requires, the commitment. They want quick kills, easy money. They'll all be caught eventually." "So you're giving them up to what? Preserve your legacy?" "I'm giving them up because the game is over, and I'd rather end it on my terms than watch it degrade into common criminality. What we did was evil, Mr. Duskwood, but it was our evil, centuries of it. That means something, even if it's something terrible." He died 3 days later, before he could testify officially. But his recordings, his maps, his confessions led to the largest investigation in FBI history. Over the next year, 137 arrests were made across 23 states. Mass graves were uncovered, some dating back to the Civil War. Families that had operated for generations were dismantled. But not all of them. Some ran, disappeared into new identities. Some fought back, leading to standoffs and shootings. And some, the smart ones, simply stopped. Blended back into normal society, their secrets buried with their victims. The Highway Guardian Initiative is still active. We still get calls, still investigate suspicious incidents. But it's different now. The organized families are mostly gone, replaced by individual predators, opportunists, regular criminals. The ancient evil Cornelius described is fading, though its echoes remain. I still dispatch trucks from my office in Shreveport, but now I also teach. New truckers come to learn not just about routes and regulations, but about safety, about watching for signs, about protecting each other. I tell them the stories, the Bleakstones, the Harrows, the Ashfords. Some think I'm exaggerating. Others understand that the monsters in stories are sometimes real. Frank Morrison died last year. Heart attack in his sleep. He was still driving, still keeping his notebook. I have it now, updated with every incident, every close call. It's a record of survival, of truckers who faced the darkness and lived. Abner Grimhold, or whatever his name is now, still sends occasional letters. He's married, has kids, works as a mechanic. He's built a good life far from the Louisiana swamps. Sometimes he asks if the nightmares ever stop. I tell him they fade, but never fully disappear. And sometimes, late at night in my office, I get calls. Not from people asking for help, but from others. Voices that sound old, accented in ways that speak of deep isolation. They don't threaten exactly. They just want me to know they're still out there, still watching, still remembering. The families may be broken, but the bloodlines persist. "We were here before you," one caller said. "We'll be here after you're gone." Maybe. But for now, the roads are safer. Truckers drive with more confidence, knowing they have backup, knowing someone will come looking if they disappear. The Highway Guardian initiative has become a model, copied by RV associations, touring companies, even bicycle clubs, travelers watching out for travelers. The thing about evil is that it's patient. It can wait generations for the right moment to return. The families that preyed on travelers for centuries haven't been destroyed, just suppressed. Someday, when surveillance fails or society breaks down or people forget to be vigilant, they might emerge again. But that's a fear for another generation. For now, we've won. The hidden predators are exposed, the ancient traditions are broken, and the roads, while never completely safe, are safer than they've been in centuries. My name is Ephraim Duskwood. I'm a dispatcher, a teacher, a keeper of dark histories. I survived the Bleakstones, helped expose the Harrows, heard the confessions of the Ashfords. I've seen the worst humanity can become when it operates in shadow. But I've also seen the best. Truckers risking everything to save strangers. Communities coming together to fight evil. Young people like Abner and Daniel finding courage to break from toxic traditions. The road goes on, and so do we. Watching, protecting, remembering. Because someone has to. Because the moment we forget is the moment they return. And we'll be ready if they do.